Hi, I'm Jason, a 21-year-old who's been through more than most at my age. Growing up, I always felt like I was in the way. After my parents divorced when I was 10, my life became a ping-pong game. Mom had her new boyfriend, and Dad was quickly remarried. Neither of them seemed to remember they had a son who needed a place to call home. I just needed to figure things out. Jason, you'll stay with your dad for a while, Mom said, avoiding my eyes as she packed up my room into boxes. Dad was no better. Your mom should be taking care of this, not me, he muttered when I arrived with my bags. The back and forth continued, each day growing shorter and their patience thinner. You know, Jason, maybe it would be easier if you stayed with your Aunt Marie just until we sort things out, Dad suggested one day, not even trying to hide his relief when I agreed. Aunt Marie was different. Her home was small, but her heart was huge. You're welcome here as long as you need, Jason, she said. The first time someone made me feel wanted in years. Why don't they want me, Aunt Marie? I asked one night, the weight of my parents' neglect heavy on my young shoulders. It's not about you, Jason, it's their loss, not yours, she replied, her words a balm to my aching heart. Living with Aunt Marie wasn't just about having a roof over my head, it was about building a life. Every school morning started with her famous pancakes and ended with her at the kitchen table, helping me with homework. She was more than a guardian, she was my biggest fan and toughest critic all rolled into one. You're smarter than you think, Jason, apply yourself, and you'll go far, she'd say, pushing me to dig deeper in my studies. Under her guidance, I started excelling in school. It wasn't just about making good grades, it was about proving to myself that I could be someone who wasn't defined by my parents' abandonment. Every A on a test, every successful project, wasn't just a win for me, it was a win for us. As I grew older, interactions with my parents became increasingly rare and emotionally distant. Phone calls on birthdays or a card during the holidays were the extent of their efforts, each one feeling more like an obligation they couldn't wait to fulfill. Hey sport, how's school? Dad would ask with an almost scripted detachment. It's going well, thanks, I'd reply, keeping it brief. The calls usually ended as quickly as they started, leaving a hollow feeling that lingered a bit longer each time. But Aunt Marie's presence made up for it all. She was there for every important moment, my first soccer goal, my high school graduation, and every small victory in between. It's not where you come from, Jason, it's where you're going, remember that, she'd remind me whenever I felt the sting of parental neglect. By the time I was ready for college, I had grown into a strong, independent young man, largely due to her influence. Aunt Marie drove me to college orientations, helped me fill out applications, and celebrated with me when the acceptance letters came in. We did it, Aunt Marie, I told her the day I got my acceptance to State University, my first choice. We sure did, kiddo, she replied, her eyes misty with pride. Her unwavering support wasn't just about fulfilling a duty, it was about providing me with the foundation of love and encouragement every child deserves. As I moved into my college dorm, looking back at her waving from the car, I knew that no matter where life took me, the lessons she taught me and the love she gave would always be with me, guiding me forward. The news came during my sophomore year of college. My grandfather, whom I hadn't seen much since I was a kid due to my parents' split but whom I loved very much, had passed away. The news hit me like a thunderbolt, a shock I hadn't anticipated, but the real surprise wasn't just his passing, it was what he left behind for me. According to his will, I was to inherit $1 million. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, feeling a mix of grief and disbelief. Your grandfather always spoke highly of you, Jason, he believed in your future, the lawyer told me as he handed over the documents. I was overwhelmed. My grandfather had watched from a distance, but still saw something in me worth believing in. It was a stark contrast to my parents, who seemed to have forgotten I existed unless it was convenient for them. The inheritance felt like a validation of my efforts and my worth, a reward for all the pain caused by my parents' neglect and abandonment. But it also brought an unexpected complication, the sudden reappearance of my parents. Almost overnight, they were back in my life, their affection overflowing in a way that felt jarring and insincere. Jason, we've missed you so much, Mom said over the phone, her voice dripping with an emotion that didn't quite reach her words. We were just thinking about how long it's been since we all got together, Dad added, as if years of neglect could be brushed aside. Their timing seemed too coincidental to be genuine. It was clear they were aware of the inheritance, and it pained me to realize their sudden interest was likely driven by the knowledge of that $1 million. The calls and messages increased, each filled with feigned concern and hollow sentiments. "We should catch up, Jason. It's been too long," Mom would say, but all I could hear was the unspoken, "We should talk about that money." I found myself in a tough position, torn between the desire to finally have my parents back and the nagging suspicion that their motivations were purely financial. The internal conflict was exhausting, and I leaned heavily on Aunt Marie's wisdom. "They're your parents, Jason, but be careful," she cautioned, her protective nature always at the forefront. "People don't change overnight." As the reality of their intentions became clearer, I braced myself for the inevitable confrontation. I knew I had to confront their sudden change of heart head-on, and I braced myself for what was quickly shaping up to be a significant conflict, one that would test not just my resolve, but the very nature of our familial bonds. The pressure built rapidly after my parents re-entered my life, with each conversation subtly steering towards finances. It wasn't long before the veil was lifted entirely. During a particularly blunt call, my father laid out their true intentions with unsettling clarity. "Jason, I've got some debts that have piled up, and your siblings need support for their education. You have the means to help," Dad said, his voice a mix of faint casualness and desperation. The word family suddenly became a tool wielded with precision to guilt me into opening my wallet. My initial shock at the directness of his request quickly turned to frustration. "We haven't really been a family for years, Dad. Why am I only hearing from you now, and only when you need something?" I countered, my voice firm despite the turmoil inside. "It's not like that, Jason. We've always cared about you," Mom chimed in, her tone soothing but lacking sincerity. The conversation escalated into a confrontation as I challenged their sudden affection. "You can't just walk back into my life and expect me to solve your problems. Where were you when I needed you?" I demanded. "We made mistakes, Jason. We're trying to make things right," Dad replied, his voice strained, but their apologies felt empty and their reasons self-serving. The more we talked, the clearer their motives became, and my resolve only strengthened. I remembered all those years with Aunt Marie, the stability and love she provided without expecting anything in return. That was what family was supposed to be. "No, I can't help you," I finally stated, each word solidifying my decision. "I have my own life to build and responsibilities that don't include fixing your mistakes." The silence that followed was telling. The disappointment was palpable. But with the pain of the confrontation came a deep sense of relief. I had stood up for myself, establishing boundaries that were long overdue. As I sat back, the weight of the conversation pressing down on me, I recognized it as a pivotal moment, one that redefined the dynamics of our relationship. I was no longer the child left behind. I was an adult taking control of my life and my choices. The confrontation, though painful, was necessary. It marked a significant turning point in my journey, reinforcing my independence and my commitment to live a life defined not by the past, but by the values and people who truly mattered. With the decision to stand firm made, I knew I needed to ensure my future and my inheritance were protected. I met with a lawyer to explain the situation and my intentions to invest wisely and secure both my and Aunt Marie's futures. The lawyer advised me on setting up trusts and investment accounts that would safeguard the money and allow it to grow responsibly. "Let's make sure your financial future is as secure as possible, Jason. You've got a good head on your shoulders," the lawyer remarked, approving of my plans to prioritize education and long-term investments. With legal protections in place, I felt a profound sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, I was making decisions entirely on my own, free from manipulation or guilt. Returning home to Aunt Marie, who had been my rock throughout this entire ordeal, I sat at our old kitchen table, the same one where we'd shared countless meals and conversations. I told her everything. "Aunt Marie, I've taken care of the inheritance. There's something else. I've set up a fund for us, for the home improvements you've always talked about and maybe even a trip to Europe, like you've always wanted," I said, watching her reaction closely. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Jason, you didn't have to do that. I didn't take care of you for any of this." "I know, Aunt Marie," I replied, my voice thick with emotion, "but you gave me a family when I had none. You deserve everything and more. You are the most deserving person of this money. You're the one who took care of me, taught me love, and gave me attention. You are my true mother." The realization of what family truly meant had never been clearer. Family wasn't just about blood relations. It was about who stood by you during your lowest moments, who supported you without conditions, and who loved you unconditionally. Aunt Marie was my family in every way that mattered. Reflecting on the entire journey, I understood that the love and support she provided were the true essence of family. I came to realize that the challenges I faced with my parents were not merely obstacles, but valuable lessons that had fortified my resolve and deepened my understanding of loyalty and love. As I looked to the future, I felt more confident and secure in who I was and in my ability to navigate whatever life might present. With Aunt Marie by my side and a clear path ahead, I was ready to embrace new possibilities. I understood that true wealth wasn't measured by my bank account but by the relationships that had endured and the resilience I had gained. The clarity about what truly matters and the strength to stand up for myself were the real inheritances from my grandfather and father. These lessons would guide me long after the money was spent, ensuring that I lived a life rich in love and integrity, a life that Aunt Marie and I would build together. That concludes our story. Now, here's a question for you. Is it ever justifiable to cut off family members financially if they only show interest when they want something? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If you found this story impactful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking content. Your support helps us bring these stories to light. Let's continue the conversation and explore these complex family dynamics together.
The eviction notice felt cold in my hands, its sharp edges cutting through the happiness of my birthday. Just a few moments ago, I had been smiling, surrounded by family, thinking this was going to be my best birthday ever. I'm Patricia, and this is how my 35th birthday became the day my family betrayed me. Open it, dear. We're all so excited for you to see what's inside, my mother said, her eyes shining, not with joy, but with nervousness. The fancy envelope looked harmless, wrapped in silver paper with a delicate bow. The living room of my childhood home, the one I had spent the last 6 years fixing up, was full of familiar faces. My cousin Dylan sat on the armrest of the couch, watching me with an unreadable expression. My brother Harold stood by the fireplace, hands deep in his pockets, avoiding my eyes. Come on, Patricia. We don't have all day, Saw chirped, her voice sickly sweet. I remember thinking it was strange how dressed up she was for a simple family gathering. As I tore open the envelope, the taste of birthday cake still in my mouth, my stomach dropped. Notice of eviction. The bold words stared back at me. What is this? My voice was barely a whisper. Mom? Dad? My mother's face crumpled. Sweetheart, we've been trying to find the right time to tell you. Tell me what? I stood up, my hands shaking. That you're kicking me out of my own home? The home I've spent my savings on? My time? My heart? Saw cleared her throat. Patricia, be reasonable. The house was never officially yours. The deed is still in your parents' names, and they've decided it's time for a change. A change? I turned to face her. What do you know about this? I'm just helping the family make the best financial decision, she said, smoothing down her designer skirt. The market is really good right now. The market? I let out a bitter laugh, though it sounded more like a sob. This is my home, not some investment property. My brother finally spoke up. Patricia, maybe we should talk about this privately. No. I slammed the paper down on the coffee table, making the plate shake. I want answers now. Mom, Dad, why are you doing this? My father wouldn't look at me. There have been concerns about your ability to take care of the house, he said. Kelly has shown us some troubling documents. Documents? I felt like I couldn't breathe. What documents? I've done nothing but improve this house. Look around, new hardwood floors, a modern kitchen, restored Victorian details. I did all of that. With questionable contractors, Kelly said smoothly. And there have been noise complaints from neighbors. Plus, some unauthorized changes to the property. That's not true. My voice shook. I turned to my best friend, Lauren, who stood frozen in the corner. Pa, tell them. You've been here through all the renovations. Lauren stepped forward, her face firm. Everything Patricia's done has been legal. I've seen all the permits myself. But my family's faces didn't change. My mother reached for my hand. Sweetie, you have 25 days. I pulled away. 25 days? To leave my home? On my birthday? The room started spinning. How long have you been planning this? Kelly straightened her blazer. I think we should all calm down and talk about this. The decision has been made, Patricia. Fighting it will only make things harder. Something clicked. This wasn't just about the house. This was planned. The formal outfit. The documents she mentioned. The way she was acting like she was just trying to help. Get out, I whispered. Then louder. Everyone get out. Patricia, please, my mother started. But one by one, they all left. Only Lauren stayed. As the door closed behind them, I sank onto the couch. The eviction notice sat on the coffee table, mocking me. Lauren sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. This isn't over, Patricia. Something isn't right here. We're going to figure it out. I wiped my eyes. The shock faded, replaced by anger. You're right. Kelly is behind this. She's always wanted this house since we were kids. I sat up, a new determination running through me. And I'm going to prove it. I looked around at my home. The walls I had painted, the fixtures I had restored, the memories I had built. I made a promise to myself. This won't be my last birthday here. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen counter, staring at my phone. 20 missed calls from Mom. 7 from Harold. None from Kelly, of course. You need to eat something, Lauren said, sliding a plate of toast in front of me. She had stayed the night, sleeping on my couch like we used to in college. You can't fight this on an empty stomach. I pushed the plate away. I can't eat. I need to find out what Kelly has been telling my parents. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. I pulled up my mom's contact and hit call. Put it on speaker, Lauren said, sitting beside me. Mom answered on the first ring. Patricia. Thank goodness. We've been so worried. Save it. I cut her off. I want to know exactly what Kelly has been saying about me. She sighed heavily. Honey, it's not just what Kelly said. She showed us documents, complaints about unauthorized construction from the neighborhood association. That's impossible. I slammed my hand on the counter. I have every permit, every approval. Who complained? Well, I don't have the actual complaints in front of me. Kelly handled all of that. Of course she did, I said bitterly. And did you even check if it was true? Did you ask me about it before surprising me with an eviction notice on my birthday? Silence. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice small. Kelly said you deny everything. She said you've been struggling with money, cutting corners on repairs. I want copies of everything, I demanded. Every document, every complaint. I want to see exactly what Kelly showed you today. Patricia, please try to understand. No, you understand, I snapped. That house is my life. I've put every penny I have into it, and I'm not leaving without a fight. I hung up before she could say another word. Lauren squeezed my shoulder. That's my girl. Now what? Now we gather evidence, I said, grabbing my laptop. I need proof that Kelly is lying. My phone buzzed. A text from Harold. Meet me at Jordan's Coffee in 25.
Need to talk.
20 minutes later, I walked into Jordan's and spotted my brother in our usual corner booth. His face looked tense, guilty. You knew, I said as I slid into the seat across from him. You knew what they were planning. Harold ran a hand through his hair. I found out yesterday morning. Mom and Dad swore me to secrecy. They said Kelly had proof you were in trouble. And you believed her? Of course not. He leaned forward. Look, something weird is going on. Last week, I overheard Kelly on the phone talking about property values and development in our neighborhood. My stomach dropped. Development.
Yeah.
And get this, her fiancé, Logan? His family owns that new luxury condo complex downtown. The pieces started coming together. Our street was one of the last historic areas in town. A prime spot for new development. My house sat on the biggest lot. She wants to sell it to developers, I whispered. That's why she's doing this. There's more, Harold said. I did some digging. Kelly's been meeting with the City Planning Commission. And guess who else was at those meetings? I already knew the answer. Mom and Dad. He nodded. They think they're protecting you from financial trouble. But Kelly is using them. She convinced them that selling is the only way to save you. My phone buzzed again. An email from Mom. with attachments. I opened the email and quickly scanned the documents. My heart pounded as I showed them to Harold. The letterhead is wrong. The permit numbers don't match my records, I said. She faked them. Keep your voice down, Harold warned, glancing around. Kelly has friends everywhere. I don't care. This is proof she's lying. I stood up, suddenly full of energy. I need to show Mom and Dad. Wait. Harold grabbed my wrist. Kelly's wedding to Logan is in 3 weeks. Everyone will be there, family, friends, business partners. If you're going to expose her, that's your chance to do it right. I sank back into my seat, my mind racing. For weeks. That's how long I had to gather evidence and prove she was trying to steal my home for her fiancé's development company. I'll help, Harold said firmly. So will Lauren. But we have to be smart. I nodded, feeling determination replace my despair. Kelly thinks I'll just give up, that I'll roll over and accept this. But she has no idea what I'm capable of. On the way home, I called Lauren. Hey, remember that friend of yours who works at the city planning office? We need to talk to her. Now. The game was on. And this time, I was playing to win. The planning office smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. Lauren's friend, Megan, pulled another file from the cabinet and added it to the growing stack on her desk. These are all the development proposals for your neighborhood from the past 7 months, she whispered, even though the office was empty. Including 3 from Valum Development Group. Logan's company, I muttered, flipping through the pages. My hands froze on a familiar sketch. My house. Lauren leaned over my shoulder. Look at the date. This was filed 3 months ago, I said, my anger rising. Before the eviction notice. Before any of this started. Megan glanced nervously at the door. There's something else. These signatures here. She pointed to the bottom of the document. Your parents' names, approving the preliminary survey. My stomach twisted. They've been planning this for months, Lauren whispered. She grabbed my arm, pointing to another name. Look who notarized it. The name jumped off the page. Bruce Weber. Kelly's father. That sneaky little. I stopped as footsteps echoed in the hallway. Megan hurriedly shoved the files back into the cabinet. I have copies at my desk. I'll email them to you tonight. We slipped out just in time. In the parking lot, I leaned against my car, trying to steady my breathing. We need to talk to Logan, Lauren said. Maybe he doesn't know what Kelly is doing.
He has to know, I said.
His company filed the proposals.
My phone rang.
Harold. Sis, you need to get to Mom and Dad's.
Now.
What's wrong? Kelly's there, with some contractor. They're talking about renovation plans. My grip tightened on my phone. They're acting like they already own the place. I was already in my car. I'm coming. 20 minutes later, I stormed through my parents' front door. Kelly's voice drifted from the kitchen, smooth as honey. The whole street will benefit from modernization. Property values will. Over my dead body, I announced. Everyone jumped. Kelly was the first to recover, her smile never fading. Patricia, we were just discussing the neighborhood's future. You mean your future. Your fiancé's future. I slapped the development proposals onto the kitchen table. When were you going to tell everyone about Logan's plans? My mother's face paled. What is she talking about, Kelly? Don't listen to her, Kelly said quickly. She's just upset about the eviction. Show them, I demanded. Show them the real reason you want my house. The contractor cleared his throat. I should go. Stay, Kelly ordered. Patricia's just making a scene as always. So emotional about everything. Emotional? I laughed bitterly. You forged documents. You lied to our parents. You're trying to steal my home for your fiancé's development project. That's enough, my father shouted. Kelly has been nothing but helpful. Helpful. I grabbed the proposals and threw them in front of him. Look at the dates. Look at the signatures. She's been planning this for months. My mother picked up the papers, her hands shaking. These aren't the documents you showed us, Kelly. Because they're fake, Kelly snapped. Patricia's desperate. She'll say anything. I have copies from the city planning office. I cut in. Official copies. Want to see them? For the first time, Kelly's calm mask cracked. You went through official records? And I found everything. The fake complaints, the forged permits, the development plans. It's all there. The contractor stood up. Miss Shelton, if there's some kind of legal issue. There's no issue, Kelly said through clenched teeth. Everything's fine. My phone buzzed. An email from Megan. The proof. I held up my phone. Want to see the evidence? It's right here. Kelly's expression hardened. You have no idea what you're doing, Patricia. No idea who you're dealing with. No, you have no idea who you're dealing with. I turned to my parents. Check your emails. I'm sending you everything. Every lie, every forged document, every secret meeting with Valram Development. Kelly? My mother's voice was small. Is this true? But Kelly was already heading for the door, the contractor following behind her. At the threshold, she turned back. This isn't over, Patricia. Not by a long shot. Then she was gone. Silence filled the kitchen. My father stared at the documents, his face pale. We should have asked you, he finally said. Should have checked.
Yes.
You should have. I gathered my papers. But now you know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I left them there, surrounded by evidence of their own misplaced trust. And I walked out. I called Lauren. Phase 1 complete, I said. Now we go after Logan. Finding him was easier than I thought. He was at his usual lunch spot, a trendy cafe downtown, sitting with his sister, Evelyn. I smoothed my blazer and walked up to their table, Lauren close behind me. Mind if we join you? I asked, sliding into an empty chair before Logan could answer. His fork clattered against his plate. Patricia? What are you doing here? Funny story, I said, pulling out a stack of papers. I was just at the city planning office. Found some very interesting documents about my house. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Your house? You mean the Victorian cella mentioned? The same one your brother's company plans to demolish, I said, watching Logan's face closely. Demolish. Evelyn turned to her brother. Logan, what is she talking about? Logan wiped his mouth with a napkin. This isn't the place. It's exactly the place, I interrupted, spreading the documents on the table. Your company filed these 3 months ago. Before the eviction notice. Before all of Kelly's lies. Evelyn snatched the papers, her face darkening as she read them. You're planning to tear down the entire street? Replace it with condos. It's a sound business decision, Logan said, sitting straighter. It's my home, I shot back. And Kelly has been manipulating my family to get it. Your parents were willing sellers, Logan countered. But I caught the hesitation in his voice. Lauren leaned forward. They were willing because Kelly tricked them. She showed them fake documents saying Patricia was mismanaging the property. She lied to everyone. Evelyn pushed her plate away, disgust clear on her face. Is that why you're rushing the wedding? To close this deal? Logan sighed. The timing is convenient. I laughed bitterly. Oh, so you admit it. Progress requires sacrifice, he started, but Evelyn cut him off.
No.
This requires deception. And I won't be part of it. She grabbed her bag and stood up. Count me out of the wedding party. Evelyn, wait. Logan called after her, but she was already storming out. I smiled sweetly. Trouble in paradise? You have no right to interfere in my business, Logan hissed. And you have no right to my house. I stood up. By the way, I sent copies of everything to the City Ethics Board. They're very interested in how Valram Development got those preliminary approvals. The color drained from his face. You're bluffing. I smirked. Try me. I dropped a business card on the table. That's my lawyer's number. You might need it. Outside, Evelyn was waiting by my car. I want to help, she said. Why should I trust you? She met my eyes. Because I've watched Kelly manipulate my brother for months. Because I know exactly how she operates. Her voice sharpened. And because I have access to Valram's internal files. Lauren grabbed my arm. Patricia, this could be huge. I turned back to Evelyn. What's in it for you? I looked at Evelyn. Why are you helping? Justice, she said. And the satisfaction of watching Kelly's perfect plan fall apart. She pulled out her phone. Starting with these. She showed me emails between her and Logan, going back 7 months. I scanned the messages, my heart pounding. There it was, clear proof. They had planned everything. Discussions about pressuring my parents, forcing the sale, and speeding up the development. This is exactly what we need, Lauren whispered. There's more, Evelyn said. Board meetings, private conversations, financial records. I can get you everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Harold. Mom and Dad want to talk. They saw the evidence. Looks like things are turning in our favor, I told Evelyn. But we need to move fast. The wedding is in 15 days. Perfect timing, Evelyn said with a smirk. Just enough time for everything to fall apart. I'll send you what I have tonight. As she walked away, Lauren turned to me. Are you sure about this? About using her? She's using us too, I pointed out. But for now, we want the same thing. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. Back off now, or you'll regret it. Some things are worth more than a house. Lauren read over my shoulder. She's threatening you. No, I said, saving the message. She's desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I turned toward my car, determination burning in my chest. Let's go see my parents. It's time they see exactly who they've been protecting. Everything was falling into place faster than I expected. But Kelly's threat stayed in my mind. A warning that this fight wasn't over. And something told me the worst was still coming. I woke to the sound of breaking glass. Heart racing, I jumped out of bed and ran downstairs. My front window was shattered. A brick lay among the shards. A note was wrapped around it. Final warning. My hands shook as I called the police. While I waited, I texted Lauren and Harold. They arrived before the cops did. This has gone too far, Harold said, picking up the brick. You need to be careful, Patricia. I'm not backing down now. I handed the note to the officer as he wrote down my statement. This is part of something bigger, I said. I have documents, emails, proof. Just file a restraining order, the officer said, looking bored. Not much we can do without proof of who threw it. After they left, Lauren helped me board up the window. At least we have Evelyn's evidence now, she said. Those emails she sent last night? Devastating. Speaking of which, I checked my phone. 5 missed calls from my mother. I need to go see them, I said. They've had time to process everything. I'm coming with you, Harold insisted. 40 minutes later, we sat in our parents' living room. Mom's eyes were red from crying. We've been such fools, she whispered. All those documents Kelly showed us, we wanted to believe she was helping. We thought they were just renovating, Dad added, his voice heavy. We had no idea they planned to tear down the whole street. Kelly knew exactly how to manipulate you, I said.
She played on your fears about me.
Made you think I was in trouble. She's been manipulating this family for years, Harold added. Remember when she convinced you to give her grandma's jewelry instead of Patricia? Mom's face crumpled. She said you didn't want it, that you thought it was old-fashioned. I never said that. I swallowed hard. Just like I never made unauthorized changes to the house. Just like I never got complaints from neighbors. We know that now, Dad said. We talked to everyone on the street. No one ever complained. In fact, they love what you've done with the place. My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Emergency. Meet me at Lady Bird Park.
Now.
I have to go, I said, standing up. But first, are you with me on this? Really with me? Mom straightened her shoulders. We'll do whatever it takes to make this right. At the park, Evelyn was pacing near the fountain, her face pale. Kelly knows I helped you, she said. She's threatening to expose something from my past to Valram's board. What is it? I asked. A mistake I made years ago. If she tells them, it could ruin my career. She ran a hand through her hair. I can't risk it. Hey. I grabbed her shoulders. Whatever it is, it can't be worse than what she's doing now. You don't understand, Evelyn whispered. My whole life could fall apart. Then let it. The words came out harsher than I intended. Sometimes you have to lose everything to do the right thing. Her eyes filled with tears. Easy for you to say. You're just fighting for a house.
No.
I shook my head. I'm fighting for justice. For truth. For every person Kelly has ever lied to, used, or hurt. I softened my voice. That includes you. Evelyn wiped her eyes. There's something else, she said. I overheard Logan on the phone. They're moving up the timeline. They want to close the deal right after the wedding. That's in a week. Less. Evelyn corrected. The rehearsal dinner is in 4 days. She straightened up, her face set with determination. You're right. I can't let her win. Not again. My phone lit up with another text from an unknown number.
Hope you enjoyed the brick.
Next time, it won't be your window.
S.
I showed Evelyn the message. Her expression hardened. She's really losing it. Good, I said. The more desperate she gets, the more mistakes she'll make, I said. Evelyn's eyes lit up. The rehearsal dinner, she said suddenly. All the investors will be there. The board members. The family. It's the perfect time to expose everything. But Kelly will be expecting something, I warned. She'll be ready. Then we have to be better prepared. I looked at her seriously. I need everything, every document, every email, every piece of proof you can find. And I need it tonight. Evelyn nodded. I'll have it in 3 hours. As she walked away, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Lauren. Your mom just called. Kelly is at their house, crying, saying you're trying to ruin her life. Your parents aren't buying it, but she's putting on quite a show. I texted back. Let her perform. In 4 days, she'll have a real reason to cry. The stakes were higher now. The threats were getting worse. But with every desperate move Kelly made, she only proved how close we were to bringing her down. The countdown to the rehearsal dinner had begun. The day before the rehearsal dinner, I sat in my lawyer's office, surrounded by stacks of evidence. Sophia, my attorney, flipped through the documents, her interest growing. These emails between Kelly and Valram are damning, she said. And these forged documents? That's criminal. But is it enough? I asked. Enough to stop the development? Absolutely. Enough to press charges? Probably. She leaned forward. But are you sure you want to do this at the rehearsal dinner? It's the perfect timing, I said. The investors will be there. The entire family will be there. My phone buzzed again. Another threat from Kelly. Last chance to back down. Remember, I know about Austin. Sophia caught my expression. What's wrong? She's trying to blackmail me now. I showed her the text. But the Austin thing, it's nothing. Just a spring break mistake from college. She thinks she can use it against me. Document everything, Sophia advised, handing me a USB drive. I've organized all the evidence here, including the police report about the brick. Are you sure you don't want private security? I'll be fine, I said. Harold and Lauren will be with me tomorrow night. Outside the office, I spotted Evelyn waiting in her car. Get in, she said. There's something you need to see. She drove us to Logan's office building, parking in the underground garage. Logan and Kelly are in a board meeting upstairs, she said. But look at this. She pulled out her tablet and played security footage from earlier that day. Kelly was arguing with someone in the garage. Her father. Turn up the volume, I said. On the screen, her father's voice came through, tense and frustrated. I can't keep covering for you, Kelly. The notary stamps, the forged documents, it's too much risk. Daddy, please, Kelly begged. Just one more day. After the rehearsal dinner, it won't matter anymore. I stiffened. What's happening after the rehearsal dinner? I looked at Evelyn. I don't know, she said. But they've booked a private room at the restaurant. Invitation only, after the main event. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Lauren. Patricia, you need to get home. Now. Someone's been in your house. I broke every speed limit getting there. Lauren and Harold were waiting outside. Inside, my breath caught. Every wall I had painted. Every fixture I had restored. Every inch of my hard work, photographed and marked with bright red X's. They're documenting everything they plan to destroy. Harold said quietly. Lauren picked up a business card left on the counter. Look who's handling the demolition. I read the name, my blood boiling. It was Weber's uncle. They're keeping it all in the family, I said bitterly. How did they even get in? Harold sighed. Your mom called. Kelly asked to borrow her spare key this morning. Said she needed to measure for wedding decorations. And Mom gave it to her?
No.
But when she refused, Kelly broke down crying, saying you were trying to ruin her special day. Mom felt guilty and told her where she keeps the spare. I sank onto the stairs, staring at the red X's covering my home. This was Grandma's house. I learned to walk on these floors. Had my first kiss in that bay window. And you're not going to lose it, Lauren said firmly. Tomorrow night, we end this. My phone buzzed, a text from Evelyn. Emergency. Kelly changed the seating chart. You're not invited to the private meeting anymore. Doesn't matter, I texted back. We'll do it during the main dinner. More witnesses that way. I spent the rest of the day with Sophia, finalizing our strategy. By nightfall, everything was ready. Lying in bed, I heard footsteps on my porch. Heart pounding, I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police. I crept to the window. It was just my mother. She left something by the door and walked away. I opened it, a small package with a note. Your grandmother wanted you to have this. I should have given it to you years ago. Love, Mom. Inside was my grandmother's antique locket. The one Kelly had claimed I didn't want. I opened it. A tiny photograph of my grandmother, standing proudly in front of the house the day she bought it. My phone buzzed again. One final threat from Kelly. Hope you're ready for tomorrow. Because I am. I touched the locket, then looked at the red X's marking my walls. Bring it on. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either I'd save my home and expose Kelly's lies, or I'd lose everything I had fought for. But looking at my grandmother's proud smile in that old photograph, I knew which one it would be. I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going down without a fight. The rehearsal dinner couldn't come soon enough. The room buzzed with nervous energy. Kelly sat at the main table, glowing in white, playing the perfect bride. Logan moved through the crowd, charming investors, making sure everyone was in place. I sat between Lauren and Harold, my grandmother's locket cool against my skin, waiting for the right moment. Look who just arrived, Lauren whispered. I glanced toward the entrance. Sophia, my lawyer, walked in with Evelyn. Right on schedule. Kelly's smile faltered for just a second before she recovered, standing to greet them. Evelyn, darling. I was worried you wouldn't make it after our little disagreement. Wouldn't miss it, Evelyn said coolly. Then she turned to the guests. Everyone, have you met Sophia? She's a fascinating person. She specializes in real estate fraud. The room went quiet. Logan appeared at Kelly's side, his grip tight on her arm. Perhaps we should start the toasts, he suggested. Wonderful idea, I said, standing and raising my glass. Kelly stiffened. That's not on the program, she said quickly. Oh, but I insist. I walked to the center of the room. After all, what kind of cousin would I be if I didn't congratulate you on your achievements? Silence fell. Every eye was on me. Patricia, my mother whispered, a warning in her voice. It's okay, Mom, I said calmly. I just want to share some interesting documents with everyone. I nodded to Sophia. She stepped forward, handing out folders to the investors. Consider it my wedding gift. Kelly's eyes went wide. Security, she called. But Evelyn was already at the door, blocking the exit. Let's start with these emails, I continued, my voice strong. They detail how Kelly and Logan planned to forge documents, manipulate my family, and steal my home for Logan's development project. Logan stepped forward, his expression tense. These are private business matters. Fraud is never private, Sophia cut in. Neither is forgery. She held up another set of papers. Which brings us to Exhibit B, falsified complaints and fake permits, complete with unauthorized notary stamps from Kelly's father. Cahoon's father shot up, his face red. Now, wait just a minute. The ethics board is very interested in your involvement, Sophia said smoothly. They'll be in touch soon. Kelly's composure snapped. "You're ruining everything," she shrieked, lunging for the folders. But Harold was faster, already handing copies to the board members. "Like you tried to ruin my life?" I asked, staring her down. "The threats, the brick through my window, the break-in." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then Logan's sister stood. "The police have been notified," she announced. "About everything." "Logan, do something," Kelly pleaded. But Logan wasn't listening. He was flipping through the documents, his expression darkening with every page. "You told me her family agreed to sell," he said, his voice cold. "That everything was legal." "It was just business," Kelly protested. "A simple property deal." "Simple," Logan muttered. His grip on the papers tightened. Kelly's world was falling apart. And this time, there was no escape. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Kelly's voice filled the room. "After the rehearsal dinner, it won't matter anymore." Logan's face darkened. "What were you planning?" he demanded. "What happens after dinner?" Kelly said nothing. Her father sighed heavily. "The demolition crew is scheduled for midnight," he admitted. We thought if the house was already gone." My breath caught. "You were going to destroy my home tonight?" My voice cracked. "While everyone was celebrating your wedding?" The room erupted. Investors stormed out. Board members whispered in tight groups. Family members shouted over one another. Through it all, Kelly stood frozen. Her perfect world, falling apart. "The development deal is off," Logan announced. "And so is the wedding." Kelly's face went pale. "But the deposits, the contracts." Her voice was small. "Are void due to fraud," Sophia added helpfully. "As is the eviction notice." My mother stepped forward, her expression filled with hurt. "How could you do this to family?" "Because she never cared about family," I said softly. "Only power, control, getting what she wants, no matter who she hurts." Kelly's composure finally cracked. "You think you've won?" she spat. "You've ruined everything I built."
No.
I touched my grandmother's locket. "You did that yourself. Every lie, every scheme, every betrayal. That was all you." Then the police arrived. Officers asked questions, took statements. And just like that, Kelly's carefully built life crumbled completely. My father turned to me, pulling me into a hug. "The house is yours," he said. "It always was. We forgot what family really means." Later, standing outside the restaurant, Lauren squeezed my hand. "How does it feel?" I looked up at the night sky, thinking of my grandmother's old photograph. "Like justice," I said. "Like home." My phone buzzed. A message from Evelyn. "Board meeting tomorrow. Valram is pulling out of all neighborhood developments." I smiled. Justice, indeed. I watched as Kelly was escorted to a police car, mascara streaking down her cheeks. But I felt no joy in her downfall. Just relief. Relief that my home, my family's legacy, was safe at last. The morning sun streamed through my newly repaired window as I sipped coffee on my front porch. The newspaper headline caught my eye. "Valram Development faces investigation. CEO steps down." Below it, a smaller headline. "Local woman charged with fraud, criminal conspiracy."
My phone rang.
"Evelyn, have you seen the news?" she asked. "Just reading it now." "How are you holding up?" "Better than expected," she said. "The board appointed me interim CEO. Turns out exposing corruption has its perks." A car pulled into my driveway. My parents. Mom carried a large box. Dad lugged what looked like photo albums. "I'll call you back," I told Evelyn. It was time to make new memories. I told Evelyn I'd call her later. Mom set the box down carefully. "We've been going through the attic," she said. "Found some things that belong here." Inside were pieces of my grandmother's life, her journals, recipes, old letters. Dad opened one of the albums and pointed to a faded photo. "That's her," he said. "The day she bought this house. Said it was the proudest moment of her life." "Until you were born," Mom added softly. "She always wanted you to have it." The screen door creaked open. Lauren stepped out, holding 2 fresh cups of coffee. "Look who just pulled up," she said. A police car parked across the street. Officer Brian got out, holding a folder. "Miss Harding," he said, "we recovered some items from Kelly's office. Things she took from your house." He handed me the folder. "Also, you should know, she took a plea deal. Full confession." "Thank you," I said, flipping through the folder. Inside were old photographs she had stolen years ago, claiming they were lost. "The DA wants to know if you'll testify about the harassment," Officer Brian added. I glanced at my repaired window, remembering the brick, the threats, the fear. "Yes," I said. "I will." He nodded and left. Mom touched one of the recovered photos. "Your 5th birthday," she murmured. "Kelly was so jealous of your party. She threw cake at you." Dad chuckled. "We should have seen the signs back then." "We all miss the signs," I said. "But we can't change the past." A truck rumbled up the street. Harold. And, to my surprise, Logan in the passenger seat. They carried construction supplies toward the house. Before I could say anything, Harold called out. He volunteered.
Logan set down a paint can.
"I owe you," he said. "We all do. Let me help fix what we almost destroyed." I studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Start with the back porch. It needs new railings." The day unfolded like a breath of fresh air. While Harold and Logan worked on repairs, Mom and I sorted through Grandma's old belongings. Lauren organized a neighborhood potluck on the lawn. Even Evelyn stopped by, carrying corporate documents. "The board wants to create a fund," she explained, handing me the papers, "to help homeowners restore historic properties instead of demolishing them." "Karma works in mysterious ways," Lauren said with a smirk. As evening fell, neighbors gathered on my lawn, sharing food and stories. Mrs. Jacqueline from next door handed me a plate. "Your grandmother loved these," she said, smiling. "She used to host dinners like this all the time. The house was always full of people, full of life." I touched my locket, thinking of the photograph inside. Maybe it's time to restart that tradition. Dad raised his glass. "To new beginnings." "And old foundations," Mom added. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "Deal finalized. Kelly is serving time. The house is officially safe." I looked around at my gathered family, friends, and neighbors. And I knew this house wasn't just walls and windows. Not just a property to be saved. It was a home, alive with memories, full of possibilities. "You know," Lauren said, nudging me, "your birthday's coming up again." I laughed. "No surprise parties this time."
She grinned. "No.
But maybe a housewarming. To celebrate properly." That morning, like every other day, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. The house was still quiet, and I went straight to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. I made a hearty meal: fried eggs, crispy grilled bacon, sautéed spinach, fluffy pancakes, and a platter of fresh fruit. After finishing, I tasted everything, feeling proud of how delicious it all turned out. Once everything was ready, I set the table and served breakfast for my husband and mother-in-law as they woke up and joined me. My husband, Larry, took a bite and muttered under his breath, "Oh," as if he was impressed. I thought he liked it. But then, my mother-in-law picked up her fork, examined the food with an unimpressed expression, and suddenly blurted out the unthinkable. "What is this?" she scoffed. "It looks like dog food." I froze. Was she serious? Before I could even process her words, she continued, her voice dripping with disgust. "I can't believe you served this. This is what you call breakfast." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm, but before I could respond, Larry took another bite, scrunched up his nose, and shockingly agreed. "Yeah, it does taste pretty bad," he said casually. "Honestly, I'd rather eat dog food than this." His words stung deeper than I could have ever imagined. My heart sank, and frustration boiled inside me. Without saying a single word, I stood up, gathered all the plates, and dumped everything straight into the trash. My appetite was gone. So was my patience. Let me introduce myself. My name is Laura. I'm 33 years old, and until last year, I was an independent working woman. But that all changed when I married Larry. We met at work, and after falling in love, we decided to start a life together. Our early days as newlyweds were wonderful. At least, that's what I thought. Larry had expressed his desire for me to become a stay-at-home wife, and out of love, I agreed. I quit my job and dedicated myself to managing our home. Cooking, cleaning, everything, I wanted to be the perfect wife for him. Since I had lived alone for years, I already knew how to cook, but after marriage, I became even more passionate about it. I experimented with new recipes, improving my skills every day. Larry used to praise my cooking, finishing every meal with a satisfied smile. "Wow, this is amazing," he would say. "Really? I'm so glad you like it." I'd reply, feeling genuinely happy and fulfilled. His compliments motivated me to keep going, to put more effort into every dish I made. I thought he truly appreciated me. But then, our peaceful newlywed life took a sudden turn. Larry's father passed away, leaving his mother all alone. After the funeral, Larry came to me with a serious expression. "As the eldest son, I can't leave my mother alone," he said. "She has no one else. I want her to live with us." At that moment, I had no idea how much my life was about to change. At first, I didn't have a bad impression of my mother-in-law. I had only met her a few times before moving in, and while she seemed a bit strict, I thought we could get along. However, I was worried. Living under the same roof meant I'd have to be constantly attentive to her needs. But my husband, Larry, was determined. "She's my mother," he insisted. "She has no one else. It's our responsibility." Reluctantly, I gave in. And just like that, my new life began, living with my husband and mother-in-law in my in-laws' house. It didn't take long for reality to hit me. From the very beginning, my mother-in-law treated me poorly. She was lazy, expecting me to handle every chore while she sat around doing nothing. Yet, despite leaving all the housework to me, she never missed a chance to criticize my efforts. "You don't clean properly," she'd say, running a finger across some invisible dust. "You lack attention to detail." Her biggest complaints, however, were about my cooking. One day, she claimed the food was too salty. So, the next day, I used less salt, only for her to say it was too bland and refuse to eat it. Some mornings, after spending time carefully preparing breakfast, she'd glance at the meal and say, "I'm not in the mood for this today," pushing her plate away like a spoiled child. But the worst part? Breakfast itself became a battleground. Since we had moved into her house, my husband now had a much longer commute, about an hour and a half each way. He had to leave early in the morning, which meant I had to wake up early to prepare his breakfast. At first, I thought it made sense to keep it simple. A quick toast with scrambled eggs, maybe some fruit. Just enough to get him going for the day. But my mother-in-law was furious. "How could you serve something so light to the breadwinner of this family?" she snapped. "A man needs a full meal in the morning. You should be cooking a main dish, side dishes, and fruit every single day." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that waking up at dawn to prepare an elaborate breakfast was unreasonable. But before I could say anything, my husband sided with her. "Mama's right," he said, barely looking at me. "From tomorrow, I'd like you to start making a proper breakfast." I felt completely alone. No one was on my side. No one cared how exhausted I was. Still, I held on to my patience. I told myself that things would get better. That maybe, just maybe, my mother-in-law would eventually warm up to me. At that time, I was still hopeful. I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. I was determined to make the perfect breakfast, to surprise them, to finally win their approval. So, I started waking up at 5:30 a.m. every day, putting my heart and soul into cooking. One morning, I made a fresh summer breakfast, sautéed spinach, perfectly cooked eggs, and a side of fresh fruit. The next day, I tried something different, a fluffy omelet filled with diced tomatoes, onions, and bell peppers, served with grilled sausages on the side. I experimented with different dishes, constantly adding new flavors and combinations. I put in so much effort, hoping they would finally appreciate my cooking. But no matter what I made, my mother-in-law always found something to criticize. "This is awful," she would say with a disgusted look. What kind of horrible dish is this? At first, my husband would say it was delicious. But the more she complained, the more he started to echo her words. She's right, he eventually said. It just tastes kind of off. That was when I realized my husband had always been a bit of a mama's boy, but after moving in, it got worse. He blindly followed her every opinion, agreeing with whatever she said. Day after day, they both criticized my cooking, telling me it was bad. Even though I knew my food tasted fine when I ate it myself, their constant remarks slowly wore me down. I started doubting myself. Maybe I really don't have any talent for cooking, but then something happened that changed everything. One day, I received an invitation to a home party. It was a potluck, and everyone was supposed to bring a dish. At first, I hesitated. What if my food really is terrible? What if they hate it too? But I pushed aside my doubts and decided to go for it. I carefully prepared my dish and brought it to the party. I watched nervously as the guests started tasting it. Then, something unexpected happened. Everyone loved it. People came up to me, showering me with compliments. "This is amazing. You're such a great cook. I need this recipe." Hearing those words, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: pride. At that moment, I realized the truth. It was never about my cooking. It was my mother-in-law who was the problem. She had been putting me down for no reason. Feeling confident for the first time in months, I went home and confronted them. My friend Angela, who had been at the party, backed me up. She called my mother-in-law and my husband into the living room and firmly told them, "You need to stop criticizing her cooking." Everyone at the party loved her food. "It's not her, it's you." I took a deep breath and added, "I know I'm a good cook now. I won't listen to your nonsense anymore." For the first time, my mother-in-law looked embarrassed. Then, instead of apologizing, she scoffed. "Oh, come on. You're so boring. Can't you take a joke?" I blinked. A joke? Was she serious? A joke. I repeated, my voice rising. "You've been putting me down every single day, making me feel worthless, and now you're saying it was all just a joke?" She rolled her eyes. Young people these days are so sensitive. I clenched my fists. "You have no idea how much pain you've put me through." She let out a dramatic sigh. "Oh, stop exaggerating." I stared at her in disbelief. At that moment, I knew one thing for sure. No matter how much effort I put in, she was never going to change. And honestly, I was done trying. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Instead of supporting me, my husband sighed and said, "Laura, calm down. Don't embarrass my mother." Embarrass her? Was I the one at fault here? I had wanted to have a proper conversation, to finally make them understand how hurtful their words were. But instead, it felt like I was being treated like a joke. Nothing I said seemed to matter. A heavy, gloomy feeling settled inside me. But then, one morning at breakfast, I finally snapped. As always, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. and went straight to the kitchen. I prepared a hearty meal: fried eggs, crispy bacon, perfectly seasoned spinach, fluffy pancakes, and a side of fresh fruit. I tasted everything, and it was delicious. I felt proud of my effort. Soon, my husband and mother-in-law joined me at the table. My husband took a bite, muttered, "Oh," and for a second, I thought he actually liked it. But then, my mother-in-law smirked and, once again, said the unthinkable. "What is this?" she scoffed, poking at her plate. "It looks like dog food." I felt my stomach twist. "Not again." "I can't believe you serve this kind of food," she continued, shaking her head as if I had committed some terrible crime. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to stay calm. But then my husband, after barely tasting his food, added, "Yeah, it should taste bad, right? I'd rather eat dog food than this." That was it. I had reached my limit. Without saying a word, I stood up, grabbed every single plate from the table, and walked straight to the trash. Then, in one swift motion, I dumped everything in. "What the hell are you doing?" my husband shouted, standing up in shock. "You're wasting food," my mother-in-law added, equally outraged. I turned to them, my voice cold and firm. "I'd rather throw it away than let either of you eat it." Then, I carefully wrapped my own portion in plastic wrap and placed it in the fridge for later. "What am I supposed to eat for breakfast?" my husband complained, looking at me like I had personally ruined his day. I shrugged. "Cook whatever you want."
We don't have time for that, he snapped.
I looked him dead in the eye. "I don't care. You won't die if you skip one meal." My husband opened his mouth to argue, but he glanced at the clock. It was time for him to leave for work. With an annoyed sigh, he grabbed his things and stormed out. My mother-in-law, as expected, had to get the last word in. "Because of your selfishness, we now have to go out just to get breakfast." I ignored her completely and went on with my cleaning. A little later, I took out my own meal, the one I had saved, and ate it for lunch.
And you know what?
It was delicious. For the first time in a long while, I actually enjoyed my food, without criticism, without insults. Then, during my lunch break, my phone buzzed. A message from my husband. I sighed and picked up my phone, wondering what kind of nonsense he was about to say next. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from my husband. "I had to buy a sandwich from the supermarket because you threw away my breakfast." When I told my coworkers, they all said they felt sorry for me. "I don't know why you're so mad, but tomorrow you better do better." I stared at my screen in disbelief. He was acting like he was the victim, like I was the one in the wrong. I felt a wave of anger so strong that I could barely think straight. That was the moment I knew I was done. Without a second thought, I grabbed my things and headed straight to the city office to get the divorce papers. That evening, when my husband returned home from work, I was waiting for him in the living room, the divorce papers laid out neatly on the table. As soon as he saw them, his eyes widened in shock. My mother-in-law, who had just entered the room, gasped. "What the hell is this?" my husband demanded. "I'm filing for divorce," I said calmly. "I've had enough." My mother-in-law scoffed. "Oh, come on.
Divorce?
Over something so trivial? You're overreacting." My husband folded his arms. "Yeah, you're being ridiculous. You're mentally unstable if you think this is worth ending a marriage over." I let out a bitter laugh. "Mentally unstable? You know what's unstable? The way you let your mother treat me like garbage every single day. The way you ignored every warning, every complaint, and told me to just deal with it." They both fell silent. I took a deep breath and continued. "Do you remember how many times I told you that your mother's behavior was abusive? That her constant insults, her belittling, and the way she treated me like a servant were destroying me? But every time you brushed it off. You said it was a joke." Still, no response. "Well, guess what?" I said, looking him dead in the eye. "It wasn't a joke to me. And I don't want to stay in this house another second. I'm leaving." I grabbed my bags and walked toward the door. "Wait," my husband called out. "We can talk about this." I shook my head. "Talk to my lawyer." With that, I walked out. For a while, my husband refused to accept the divorce. He tried to act like it was just a phase, like I would come crawling back. But thanks to my lawyer, the process moved forward. And one more thing, before I left, I had secretly recorded every single morning where my mother-in-law insulted me, and my husband sat there, letting it happen. I had proof of all the emotional abuse, and because of that, I was able to secure alimony for moral harassment. Months passed. My life was peaceful again. No more early morning insults. No more exhaustion. No more walking on eggshells. Then one day, I got a call from my ex-husband. His voice was shaky, almost desperate. "Laura, please, come back." I nearly laughed.
Why?
"My mother's cooking is awful," he admitted. "I got used to her meals, and now, everything she makes is way too salty. I can barely eat it. It makes me sick." I rolled my eyes. "She's also too lazy to do any housework," he continued. "I didn't realize how much you did until you left. Now she complains about cleaning and gets exhausted over the smallest chores. It's unbearable." I let out a sigh. "Sounds like a you problem." "Laura, please," he begged. "I made a mistake. I shouldn't have treated you that way." I paused, then said the words I had been wanting to say for a long time. It's too late. My love for him was gone. Completely. and I had no intention of ever looking back. Of course, I wasn't going to let my ex-husband off that easily. I had a little revenge plan for him. Since many of my former colleagues still worked at his office, I decided to meet up with them and tell them the truth. I gathered all the evidence, photos of the elaborate breakfasts I had prepared every single morning. Each dish was carefully plated, a different menu every day. I had worked so hard, and he had treated me like nothing. So, I created a new Instagram account and started posting all the pictures. I made sure to highlight how much effort I had put into cooking, how dedicated I had been as a wife. When I showed my Instagram to my former coworkers, they were stunned. "I can't believe he still complained after all this," one of them said. Another shook their head. "He told us you were lazy and didn't take care of him." What a liar. Word spread like wildfire. Soon, the entire company knew what kind of man my ex-husband really was, the husband who belittled his wife while she was doing everything for him. The man who sided with his toxic mother and treated his wife like a servant. And just like that, my ex-husband became the office joke. His coworkers gave him cold looks. People whispered behind his back. No one felt sorry for him anymore. Honestly, he deserved it. Meanwhile, my life took a turn for the better. I found a new job, one where I was respected and valued. Now I live comfortably on my own, free from the weight of my past. No more waking up at 5:30 a.m. No more walking on eggshells. No more bending over backward for people who don't appreciate me. I sleep peacefully every night, and for the first time in a long time, I wake up feeling happy. Cooking, which once felt like a duty, has become one of my favorite hobbies. I try new recipes, experiment with different flavors, and most importantly, I cook for myself because I love it, not because I have to. And as for my ex-husband, well, let's just say he's stuck eating his mother's awful cooking. And I've never been happier. If I had known about your condition, I wouldn't have had you. You don't belong in our family. When my mother said those words, my world went dark. Let's go. From now on, a new life begins for the three of us, my father said loudly, sticking his head out of the car window. He said it right in front of my grandparents' empty house. My parents laughed as they drove away, leaving me behind. I just stood there, frozen, watching their car disappear. I was only 11 years old. My name is Rachel, and I'm about to turn 26. I have a twin brother, Henry. We used to live with our parents, but we've been apart for over 11 years because of what happened back then. My father had a regular job, and my mother worked part-time while also taking care of the house. We were an ordinary family, just like any other. But everything changed when we started elementary school. As soon as school began, my brother's talents stood out. He was expected to get perfect scores on every test. "Henry, you're amazing." Another perfect score. "You're smart, and you're going to be someone great one day," my mother would say, smiling. My father would laugh and say, "Exactly. He could be a scholar, a doctor, or even an athlete. At least he'll never have to worry about money." Meanwhile, I struggled in school. I couldn't focus because of the noise, chairs moving, pencils clicking, it all distracted me. Teachers scolded me all the time for not paying attention. As the years passed, my parents became more and more focused on my brother. Meals were always his favorites. He got to go on fun trips, and he was given anything he wanted. But for me, things were very different. I was often ignored. Maybe if I had told my teachers or other adults how my parents treated me, things could have been different. But I couldn't say anything. I struggled to speak and express my feelings. My thoughts were messy, and I couldn't put them into words properly. Now that I'm an adult, I can share my thoughts a little better, but people still misunderstand me sometimes. Even when I think I'm answering correctly, I don't always understand what the other person means, and I end up saying something that doesn't make sense. My mother once told me that I was born with a mild developmental disorder. Over the years, I have learned to do more things on my own, but I still face many challenges. As a child, adults found me difficult to deal with. But that was no excuse for my parents to neglect me. I kept growing and learning, even when they looked down on me. My parents saw me as a foolish child. They always compared me to my talented brother and treated me as if I were worthless. Now, as an adult, I could stand up to them, but back then, they had all the power. I didn't argue or resist. I just smiled and accepted everything. My brother and I were close when we were little, but as he got older, he changed. He stopped trying to understand me and started acting like I was a burden. "Don't talk to me at school," he told me one day. "It's good that we don't look alike. I don't want people to know we're siblings. Just stay quiet, you're stupid." His kind words disappeared, and soon, he treated me like I was disgusting. Eventually, he ignored me completely. My parents never cared about how he treated me. They had already stopped paying attention to me, and I became invisible in my own home. On special days like birthdays and Christmas, my parents took my brother out to eat. I wasn't invited. There were no cakes, no gifts, no celebrations for me. They would buy me a cheap, discounted meal from the supermarket and leave me home alone. Even on New Year's, it was the same. "Stay in your room. I can't focus with you around," my father told me. So, while my family celebrated in the living room, I sat in my room, eating snacks by myself, listening to their laughter. "You don't need study materials, right? You can't do anything anyway," my parents said without a second thought. They bought my brother a desk and all the study supplies he needed, but they gave me nothing. I lost all motivation to study, and my grades got worse and worse. I felt like I didn't belong at school or at home. But there were 3 people I trusted: my grandparents. They lived far away, over 3 hours by car, so we couldn't visit them often. Still, I was allowed to go with my family twice a year, once in the summer and once at the end of the year. The only rule was that I had to stay quiet the whole time. My grandparents lived in the countryside, surrounded by nature. My parents and brother thought it was boring, but to me, it was a magical place. I loved the beautiful colors of the trees, the sky, and the fields. While my brother stayed busy studying, I spent my time drawing. I used my colored pencils to sketch landscapes on the back of old flyers. My parents and brother looked at me with disgust, but my grandparents didn't. Instead, they hung my drawings on their fridge and said, "What a beautiful sunset you drew." That moment filled me with happiness, not just because they put up my drawing, but because they understood what I wanted to say without me having to speak. My grandparents didn't treat me any better than my brother, but they loved both of us equally. That was rare in my life. The 2 visits each year were the only times I felt supported. Then, when we were 11 years old, something unexpected happened. It was a cold April day, just as spring break had started, when my parents suddenly made an announcement. "We've sold our apartment." I was confused. "What do you mean?" I asked. My brother laughed. "You're so dumb. The house is sold. We're moving to a new place and starting a new life." I felt overwhelmed. If our home was sold, where would we live? What about school? When were we moving? Why so suddenly? Before I could ask more questions, my father snapped at me. "Shut up. You always talk about useless things. How could you not notice? We've been getting ready for a long time. Just pack your stuff." I looked around in shock. The living room was already packed up. I hadn't noticed before, because I spent most of my time in my room. Things had been disappearing little by little, but I never realized what was happening. Panicking, I held back my tears and started packing. I could only take a few toys and just enough clothes to get by. Since it was spring break, most of what I had left were my school supplies. I packed them all into boxes as fast as I could. "I'm ready. Everything is packed, and I have my school bag too," I said, hoping for some kind of response. But my father just waved me off. "We don't need your report. Just get in the car." "Okay, I understand," I said. My father roughly tossed my cardboard box into the trunk, and I got into the car, holding my school bag. But something felt off. Henry, who always sat next to me, wasn't there. "Where's Henry?" "He's not here." "Where is he?" "It can't be just the 3 of us moving, right? Are we missing some bags?" "Be quiet in the car," my mother snapped at me. I quickly shut my mouth. "You're hard to understand," my father said. "We gave your brother some pocket money and let him go out to play. Now be quiet." I fell silent and stared blankly at the blossoming trees outside the car window. But then, a small hope lit up in my heart. Maybe, just like they always took my brother out for fun, this time, they were taking me somewhere special. Maybe this move was a surprise for me. Without realizing it, I smiled. My parents were quietly talking about something, but I was too excited to care about their conversation. I never imagined that this happiness would turn into something completely different. At some point, I fell asleep. Suddenly, my mother's loud voice jolted me awake. "Wake up. Take your school bag, and get out of the car." Still half asleep, I stepped out of the car, confused about where we were. But then, I saw the familiar sight in front of me. My grandparents' house.
Yay.
"Grandma, Grandpa," I said happily as I rushed to the door. But when I tried to open it, I froze. The door was locked. "Mom, I can't get in." "Oh, is that so? Well, today's a weekday, so they're probably still at work," she said casually. "But I just called them, so they'll be back soon."
See you.
Before I could process what she meant, my father dropped my bags in front of the door and got back into the car. Panic filled me. I quickly grabbed my mother's hand. "Wait, where are you going?" "Mom? Dad? Wait. We're going back. We can't leave your brother alone, can we?" my mother said as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "What?" My heart pounded. She pulled her hand away from mine and said, "Your brother got into a famous private elementary school that guarantees a good future. He's transferring next term. We sold the apartment to help pay for his tuition, and we're moving to a new house for him." I stared at her, stunned. "But what about me?" "You being around distracts him. And you cost extra money for food. With the new school year starting, this is a perfect chance for you to stay here." "Wait, what? Am I transferring to a different school?" My voice shook with confusion. My mother's expression darkened. "This is exactly what annoys me," she snapped.
I didn't know what to say.
"You've been a burden to me since you were little," my mother said coldly. "Your grades are bad, and you don't even look good. You can't hold a proper conversation. Your brother is such a good child, but you always cause problems." I felt my heart pound. Did I do something wrong? If I did, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. "I don't need fake apologies," she snapped. "If I had known about your condition, I wouldn't have had you. You don't belong in our family." Her words made my whole world go dark. "Let's go. From now on, a new life begins for the three of us," my father said loudly, sticking his head out of the car window. I had to stop them somehow. "Don't go. Don't leave me here."
Dad. Mom.
Am I really such a bad child? Thoughts spun in my head, but when I tried to speak, I couldn't get the words out. My mouth moved, but nothing came. My mother only glanced at me before getting into the car. "Sorry for the wait," she said to my father. "Since we're here, let's buy that famous cake from around here and eat it with Henry." I stood there, frozen, watching as my parents drove away. "Rachel, are you okay? Rachel, say something." Through my teary eyes, I saw my grandparents looking at me with worry. By then, it was already dark. While waiting for them, I must have fallen asleep outside without realizing it. "Your hands are freezing, and your face is so pale," my grandfather said as he wrapped me in his jacket. Then, he carried me on his back and brought me inside to a warm room. My grandparents moved quickly, speaking in angry voices. "How long was Rachel left outside?" my grandmother said in disbelief. They had found out only by accident. My grandfather happened to check his phone at work and saw a message from my parents. "We left Rachel in front of the house. Please take care of her." That was it. No warning. No explanation. My parents didn't even bother to call in advance. They just sent that one message and disappeared. At that moment, I realized how little I meant to them. As I sipped the hot milk my grandmother gave me, the warmth spread through my body. I felt safe for the first time, but the moment I relaxed, my tears started falling. My grandmother gently stroked my back and let me cry. Meanwhile, my grandfather suddenly stood up and grabbed the phone. He called my father, his voice firm and angry. The conversation quickly turned into a shouting match, and finally, he slammed the phone down. I talked to your dad, but we couldn't have a proper conversation, my grandfather said. Can you tell me what happened? Through my tears, I tried to explain everything that had led up to this moment. My words were messy, more jumbled than usual, but my grandparents just listened quietly. They said I don't belong in the family because I have a developmental disorder. I sobbed. That it would have been better if I was never born. Mom and Dad are starting a new life with Henry. As I choked out those words, my grandmother suddenly wrapped me in a tight hug. What are you saying? You are a wonderful child, she said firmly. No matter what anyone says, you are precious to us. I'm truly happy that you were born. But, people's worth isn't decided by how smart they are or how they look, she continued. Your grandfather and I are just ordinary people. We didn't go to fancy schools, but we lived our lives doing what we were good at. You might struggle with studying, but you have a gift for feeling and expressing things deeply. That is a talent that belongs only to you. Talent, I whispered. Yes, my grandfather said gently. There's no one here who will make you feel small anymore. You don't have to be afraid. I'm sorry we didn't see what was happening sooner, he added, stroking my head. You've been trying your best all this time. Hearing those words, I couldn't hold back my emotions anymore. I burst into tears, and my grandparents held me until I had cried everything out. From that day on, I started living with them. They enrolled me in a small local elementary school where the teachers were patient and kind. One teacher, in particular, was the first person outside my grandparents who truly understood me. Because there weren't many students, the school had a special program that adjusted lessons to each student's needs. They considered my struggles and helped me learn in a way that worked for me. Thanks to that, my grades, which had always been bad before, started to improve. Even though I still found it hard to communicate, I learned to accept myself. Eventually, I made friends. My life became easier, both mentally and physically, and I finally discovered what I truly wanted to do. 16 years passed. During that time, I never heard from my parents or my brother. At some point, their addresses and phone numbers changed, and before I knew it, they had completely disappeared from my life. Their faces started fading from my memory. But then, one day, everything changed.
Bang, bang, bang.
Open the door. I know you're in there. The loud knocking shattered the peaceful morning silence. My grandparents were already awake. Still groggy, I got out of bed and walked toward the entrance. For over a decade, you abandoned your own daughter. My grandfather's angry voice rang out. What do you want now? I stepped outside and froze in shock. Well, if it isn't Rachel. You've grown so much. The woman standing before me looked nothing like the mother I remembered. She used to be neat and polished, but now she looked worn out and tired. The man beside her had a big belly, nothing like my father's once slim figure. They both smiled warmly and reached out their hands as if we were family. I stepped back, avoiding their touch, and glared at them. If you're really my parents, why are you here? Don't talk like we're strangers, my mother said. We came to talk. Talk. Yes, my father said, nodding. We've heard everything. It seems this workshop is doing really well now. Your grandfather is getting old, and as both a manager and a craftsman, he can't keep up like he used to. That's why we've come back, my mother added with a smile. I thought I'd take over the business. And we heard that our lovely daughter is set to inherit it. That should be ours to receive. My grandfather let out a sharp snort at their words. Oh, so you're back to take whatever's left, huh? And you even think you can run the workshop? He shook his head in disbelief. How bold. An amateur who knows nothing about glasswork thinks he can take over. We've already chosen the next owner. What? My mother and father exchanged glances. It's Rachel, my grandfather said firmly. She's a genius. Ridiculous, my father spat. This child? She can't do anything. Before he could continue, my grandmother suddenly threw a newspaper at his face. What are you doing? He asked angrily. Look inside, you fool, she snapped. Read it. Confused, my father flipped through the newspaper. His eyes widened as he looked at me, then back at the article, then at me again. A young glass artisan from a small workshop goes global. It was a feature from a recent interview. By the time I was in middle school, I had fallen in love with my grandfather's work. I started helping in the workshop, first as an assistant. But as I became more involved, I quickly became an apprentice. My grandfather recognized my skills, and I developed a deep passion for capturing nature's beauty in glass. A few years ago, I finally created a piece I had always dreamed of making. When I started selling my work, it became popular on social media. Soon, people began recognizing my talent, and I became known as a skilled glass artisan. Now, I receive orders from restaurants and shops worldwide. The workshop has grown, we've hired more artisans, and we even sell online. My father suddenly burst into laughter. "You really are our daughter," he said, exaggerating his praise. "Not like that useless, timid son of ours." My mother eagerly nodded in agreement. "Useless? Timid?" I repeated, shocked by their words. They spoke about my brother as if he was nothing, completely different from the way they used to praise him. I asked about Henry, and my mother glared at me sharply. "Just listen," she snapped. Then, with excitement in her voice, she started talking. According to her, my brother had graduated from university and gotten a job at a top company. At first, everything was going well. But after years of being praised as a genius, he became arrogant and fragile. When he faced challenges in the real world, he couldn't handle them. He quit his job less than a year after starting. Can you believe it? Just a little scolding, and he gave up, she scoffed. Now, Henry barely left his room. He only came out to use the bathroom or take a shower. "We quit our jobs because Henry started working," my father added. Then, looking at my grandfather, he said, "Dad, putting the inheritance aside, you have money, right? Can't you take care of us? At least me and your daughter?" My grandfather looked at him in shock. "Do you two only think about yourselves?" he asked. "He's still young, he'll figure something out," my father argued. "But we can't find new jobs at our age. If you let us stay here, we'll be fine. Come on, Dad, just listen to your loving son's request." My grandfather let out a deep sigh and went back inside. I stood there, speechless. Then my mother turned to me, staring. "You should live with your mom and dad too, right?" she asked. Then she laughed. "Oh, I forgot. You don't even understand what we're talking about. Just nod and agree." Her eyes were bloodshot. My father nodded along as if everything she said made sense. I took a deep breath and answered, "Why should I live with strangers?"
What?
My mother's smile disappeared. "We're your real parents. We raised you," my father shouted. "When I lived with you, I never felt like I was cared for. I barely existed," I said firmly. "It was my grandparents and my teachers who actually raised me." They froze, shocked by my words. "You may be my parents by law," I continued, "but I have no memory of you as parents. I can't live with strangers." I looked at them, truly seeing them as strangers. If I was wrong, my grandparents would correct me, but they didn't say a word. My grandfather simply smiled. My father turned to him. "Don't you think that's a terrible thing to say? Dad, say something." My grandfather shrugged. "If you want me to say something, fine. It's strange that you claim to have raised Rachel when you abandoned her at 10. No, not about me. Say something to her." "Rachel," my grandfather said, turning to me. "Say something to your father." I looked at my father. "Something," I said blankly.
No.
"That's not what I meant," he shouted, flustered. "You told me to say something," I replied. "So I did." I said something, and my father's face turned red with frustration. My grandfather let out a chuckle before laughing loudly. "Don't abandon us. Dad, please," my father begged. My grandfather waved him off. "Enough already," he said in a deep, firm voice. "Why are you acting so spoiled now?" At his sharp tone, both my parents froze. While they stood there in shock, my grandmother quickly went to the kitchen. She returned holding a large bag in her hand. "Perfect. Now, get out. You bring bad luck," she said, then suddenly threw a handful of salt at my mother's face.
Ouch.
"What is this?" my mother shrieked. "Salt," my grandmother said calmly, holding up the bag. Parents who abandon their own child bring nothing but bad luck. Then, she grabbed another handful and threw it at my father. Go back already, she shouted. I'll keep throwing salt until you leave. My grandfather stood beside her, holding a fresh bag of salt. Leave, he roared as he threw a handful at them with force. The salt hit my parents straight in the face. Stop it. Dad, Mom, please, my parents cried. But my grandparents didn't stop. They stood firm, shouting, Go back. Never come back. My parents, now desperate, clung to my hands. Are you really going to abandon your own parents? They pleaded. We're drowning in debt. We can't survive like this. Isn't family supposed to help each other? I looked at them coldly. My family is only my grandparents. I yanked my hands free from their grip. My parents collapsed to the ground in despair. I took the bag of salt from my grandmother and stepped forward. This is goodbye forever, I said. Then, I emptied the entire bag of salt over them. That was the final moment. My parents, defeated, scrambled to their feet and ran away as if they were fleeing for their lives. Time passed, and one day, my brother showed up at the workshop. After my parents ran away, the debt collectors who had been chasing them had left Henry behind. They had fled in the middle of the night, abandoning him. Soon, the debt collectors found their house, evicted my brother, and left him completely lost. With nowhere to go, he was taken in by the police. Since we were his only living relatives, the authorities contacted my grandparents. You don't work, you don't eat, my grandfather said firmly. If you're willing to work hard and help out in the workshop, we'll give you a place to live and food to eat. What do you say? My brother agreed, right away. At first, he struggled with the workshop tasks. His skills were rough, and my grandfather and the other workers often scolded him. But when he started handling online sales and accounting, his talents shone through. Soon, he became an important part of the workshop. Now that he's grown, my brother feels ashamed of how he treated me in the past. He acknowledges my skills and even supports me. It's still too soon to say we've completely made up, but it feels both nice and a little awkward to have him treating me kindly again. Interestingly, just as my brother was settling into his new role and gaining everyone's trust, our parents suddenly contacted him. Henry, where are you? What are you doing? Things are getting bad here. If this keeps up, we might end up working on a fishing boat. Please help us. They didn't ask how he was, or even seem to care about him. They only thought about themselves. That was the last straw. My brother lost all patience. Without a second thought, he changed his phone number and email, cutting off all contact with them for good. I wonder if those two are actually out at sea now. In the end, both my brother and I feel truly free from our parents. Now, at our dinner table, it's just my grandparents, my brother, and me. The food isn't anything fancy, but it feels warm and comforting. On the slightly uneven plate my brother made, there's mashed potatoes cooked by my grandmother. My grandfather sips his beer from a glass that I crafted. For the first time in my life, I feel a happiness I never had as a child. My name is Betty, and at the start of last year, I enjoyed eating fancy meals a little too much. Because of that, I gained 6 kilos. Now, at 44, I'm on a diet to get ready for the holiday season. My plan is simple: lose the weight now so I can enjoy holiday treats without worrying later. Sounds like a smart idea, right? With all the delicious food from Christmas to New Year's, it's always a challenge. I might even treat myself to some Valentine's chocolate. Just thinking about it makes my mouth water. It looks like, just like every year, I might end up gaining a few extra pounds. Today, I want to share a winter story from when I was 24. After dating for years, I was getting ready to be engaged to my boyfriend, Adam. It was time for him to meet my parents, a serious step that meant wedding talks were near. My parents liked Adam, which made things easier when discussing our future. But something unexpected happened when my older sister, Linda, who is 4 years older than me, came home from work. Right away, I noticed that she was strangely interested in Adam. Sisters can understand each other without words, and it didn't take me long to see that Linda had fallen for him at first sight. At first, I thought it was just a silly crush that would pass. But when she met him, she blushed a lot and held onto his hand for too long. Her dreamy looks didn't go unnoticed by me. Even though it felt wrong for her to act this way toward my fiancé, I told myself it was just a harmless crush and that she wouldn't actually do anything about it. But things got worse after Adam left. Right after taking a shower, with only a towel wrapped around her, Linda came to me and told me to break off my engagement. She accused Adam of being a womanizer and said I deserved someone better. But when I asked for proof, she had none. She was only going by her woman's intuition. The funny thing was, Linda had never even been in a relationship before. I found it hard to take my sister's feelings seriously. After knowing Adam for so many years, I trusted him completely. I knew he was a good man, so I focused on our relationship instead of the drama my sister was creating. I didn't give much thought to her warnings and just shrugged it off with a casual, "Yeah, I'll be careful." After that conversation, Adam started visiting our house more often. He wanted to build a strong relationship with my family, which I thought was really sweet. My parents already liked him, so I hoped this would make things even better. I imagined a happy and peaceful future with him. But things started getting awkward because of my sister's behavior. According to Adam, whenever I wasn't around, she acted way too friendly with him. She would grab his arm, stand too close, and even ask him strange questions like, "Don't you think Betty is a little immature?" She even asked for his phone number and once fell in a way that exposed her underwear. Luckily, Adam found her behavior more funny than attractive, which was a relief. If he had been the type of man to encourage this, it would have been a real problem. But my sister seemed to believe she still had a chance with him. Since she was my sister, Adam couldn't just reject her harshly without making things awkward in the family. Every time they met, she would sweetly call out to him, trying to win him over. It wasn't just because she liked him at first sight. She also knew he worked for a well-known company and thought he was the perfect catch for a stable future. "He's reliable, has a handsome face, and is such a good man," she would say, completely smitten with him. Despite all this, my parents never said a word about her inappropriate behavior. Their silence didn't surprise me. They had always been passive when it came to my sister's actions. She had never been very responsible. For example, if she was asked to heat side dishes, she would accidentally use a plastic container that would melt in the microwave. She wasn't good at studies or sports either. She often skipped swimming lessons, making excuses about her foot hurting, feeling sick, or having skin problems. It was the same with household chores. She never really did them well. She wasn't particularly beautiful either, but somehow, she always managed to create drama and attract attention, just like she was doing now with Adam. As the eldest daughter, my sister had always been treated differently by our parents. They never scolded her or corrected her mistakes. Instead, they quietly expected me to support her from the background. I was always told to let my sister shine while I stayed in the background, which felt unfair. It seemed like my parents thought she wasn't as capable as me and felt sorry for her. Because of that, they spoiled her even more. I, on the other hand, was always responsible and quick to handle things on my own. Maybe for them, helping someone who already did well wasn't as exciting, so they focused more on my sister's needs. Over time, I got used to being treated this way, even when they downplayed my abilities in front of others. But as I grew older, I started to understand the value of my hard work, especially in school. I no longer wanted to accept this family pattern. If I had continued to follow their expectations, I might have ended up doubting myself. When I started standing up for my achievements, my sister felt like I wasn't supporting her anymore. This created a small gap between us, but not a major fight. We could still talk normally, and I often gave her advice on different things. Our family had its own way of doing things. My parents were overprotective of my sister, and sometimes she felt jealous of me. But despite everything, I still thought of us as a normal family. That balance, however, was shaken when Adam didn't return my sister's feelings. Her frustration reached its peak the night before my wedding. She told our parents, "I can't accept that my younger sister is getting married before me." My parents tried to comfort her, saying, "Don't worry, you'll find a good husband too, Linda." But even with their reassurance, she was stuck on the idea that the older sister should marry first, and that I was rushing into marriage too soon. "But the wedding is tomorrow." "What are you saying, Mom? Don't you care about me?" I'm going to look like the sad older sister who got left behind, she cried. That night, I overheard a heated conversation between her and my parents from the hallway. Was it really necessary for her to marry before me? If I had waited for her, I would have lost precious years of my life. Her reaction felt too dramatic to me. I thought she would calm down after letting out her frustration. But instead, she made a shocking demand. Mom and Dad will not attend the wedding tomorrow. So please, just accept that, Betty. I was shocked. My parents had actually agreed not to come to my wedding just to please my sister. It felt like they were following some strange rule where my sister had all the power. This wasn't just about spoiling her. It was something much worse. Fine, I'll accept it. Let her have a wedding that no one in her family acknowledges, my sister finally said, but it was clear she didn't want me to marry Adam. She probably had feelings for him herself. The reality hit me. I was about to have a wedding without my parents, all because of my sister's jealousy. The night before, I barely slept, not because I was excited, but because I was filled with worry. I kept thinking about the awful conversation with my sister and parents. I couldn't forget the satisfied look on her face when she found out they wouldn't be coming. On the wedding day, I had to go through the painful task of explaining everything to Adam and his parents. I'm sorry, but my sister is against this marriage, so my family won't be coming, I told them. Saying those words broke my heart. Adam's parents were stunned. They couldn't believe there were parents who would skip their own daughter's wedding. They stayed silent for a moment, letting the weight of the situation sink in. Sensing how painful this was for me, my mother-in-law took my hand, and my father-in-law placed his hand on top of ours. Remember, you have family here with you. Don't let this day be a sad one. Come on, give us a smile, my mother-in-law said warmly. Her words were filled with kindness, the kind of love and support I should have received from my own parents. At that moment, standing there in my wedding dress, tears filled my eyes. But Adam quickly came to my side, gently stroking my hair. Jessica, I'm here as your husband. Please don't worry about who isn't here, he said softly. Seeing me about to cry, my in-laws and Adam tried to cheer me up. Don't cry, you're the bride. Your makeup will run, they joked, trying to lighten the mood. Then my mother-in-law looked at me seriously and said, Jessica, I know this is hard, but today is the start of your new life. Focus on building your own family now. Despite feeling abandoned, I felt their warmth as they wrapped me in a tight embrace. First my mother-in-law, then Adam, then my father-in-law. At that moment, I made a promise to myself. Just as my mother-in-law had said, this was my new beginning. That day, Adam and I got married, starting our life together. 14 years have passed since then. Adam and I have been blessed with 3 children, a smart daughter who can handle anything and 3 playful sons who always find a way to cause mischief around the house. Sometimes, I think back to that difficult time, but I have never regretted choosing Adam and the beautiful family we built together. I hear myself shouting, stop it now, and even I'm surprised by how much I sound like a strict mom. Life with Adam has been good, his career has grown, we bought a house, and we've been living a stable, happy life. Then one day, something completely unexpected happened. My father, mother, and sister suddenly appeared at our doorstep. After the wedding, I had distanced myself from my family and never shared my new address with them. Yet, somehow, they found us and showed up unannounced. Of course, my first words to them weren't warm greetings like, "It's been so long." Instead, I coldly asked, "What do you want?" My sister was the first to speak. "I need a favor from you," she said. My parents quickly joined in. "It's something only you can do for us," they added, looking at me seriously. I was confused. After 14 years of no contact, what could they possibly want from me now? I stayed silent, feeling both curious and uneasy. Then my mother finally spoke the shocking words. "We want you to give Adam to your sister." Adam and I stared at them in complete disbelief. "Wait, what? What do you mean I need to give Adam away?" I asked, my heart racing. My parents avoided my eyes, looking guilty, while my sister stood there with a smug look on her face. Despite being 40, still single, and now unemployed after her company shut down, She seemed completely unfazed by her situation. "It's tough," my father sighed. "We're worried about your sister's future. She's single and out of work. Your sister's. You should understand and help her." Inside, I was screaming, "No way," but I stayed quiet, wanting to hear what else they had to say. Then my father spoke again, and each word made me angrier. "She has always liked Adam, and she's still alone because of that. You've had your time with him, haven't you? Can't you let your sister have him for the rest of her life?" "What are you even saying?" I snapped, completely shocked. Adam was just as stunned, struggling to find words. My parents kept pleading, while my sister stood there, confident, as if she truly believed she would get what she wanted. Given how my parents had always spoiled her, it wasn't surprising that she thought this ridiculous demand would actually work. As I stood there, too stunned to speak, Adam pulled me aside and whispered, "This might actually be our chance to end all of this. Remember that joke you made when you were drunk? It's like it's happening for real." Feeling a strange sense of boldness, we turned back to my family. "Do you really love Adam that much?" I asked, looking directly at my sister. I looked at my sister and asked directly, "Do you really love Adam that much?"
She was caught off guard by my question.
She stammered, clearly shocked, before finally answering, "Yes, I've loved him all this time." "That's a long time to love someone who's married to someone else," I said, watching her closely. Her response was filled with emotion. "It's been so painful watching you three together. It should have been me." Adam and I struggled to keep a straight face. Her words were intense, almost as if she had convinced herself that she and Adam were meant to be. I decided to play along. "If you love him that much, I'll step aside," I said dramatically. Everyone gasped, especially my parents. "Really? But don't you love Adam too?" my mother quickly asked, looking at me in disbelief. "No," I answered casually. Adam, catching on, added, "Actually, to tell you the truth, I've always had feelings for Linda." My sister's face lit up with excitement. "Really?" "I knew it," she exclaimed, thrilled beyond reason. The whole scene was surreal. Adam and I exchanged glances, struggling not to laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. The truth was, we were happily together, but sometimes the best way to expose nonsense was to go along with it. I hugged Adam, noticing the playful sparkle in his eyes. "I've been waiting for this moment," he said, his voice shaking with suppressed laughter. Beside me, he pretended to cry, but his shaking shoulders gave him away. I leaned in and whispered, "Let's just finish this little act. We'll always be together." Meanwhile, my sister started talking to Adam as if they had been in love for years. It was as if, in her mind, she had been living a romantic story with him for the past 14 years. Adam grinned and said, "Linda, I'm so happy. Please be my support from now on."
"Yes."
"Absolutely," she replied eagerly. Then Adam dropped the bombshell. "So, I'm going to quit my job." My sister's excitement vanished instantly. Her face went pale with shock.
"What?"
"I want to be with you all the time, Linda. So, I'm quitting my job. I won't even go outside anymore. I'll follow you everywhere, even to the bathroom. I'll watch you do housework," he said cheerfully. My sister's smile froze. Our parents looked uncomfortable. "But I don't have a job either." "This is the problem," she stammered. "What's the problem? If we're together, we don't need to worry about money. Love is enough," Adam said, pushing the joke even further. My sister's panic grew. But these days, you need to pay for things like insurance. It's not like the old times. You can't live on love alone." Seizing the moment, I added, "Adam, if we do end up divorcing, I'll be taking a good share of the money and property, so you better be ready to pay up," I said. Adam laughed and added, "Don't worry, your sister and parents will handle the payments." Hearing this, my parents turned pale. They looked at each other, clearly in shock. "Linda, this is hard to say, but this isn't right. You can't just take your sister's husband." My father finally spoke. "Exactly, Linda. That's just not how things work," my mother added. But where had all their confidence gone? Just moments ago, they were demanding I hand over my husband. It was as if they had suddenly realized how absurd this was. "What are you talking about? You promised to give Adam to me," Linda protested. "That was before," my father said weakly. "I don't want to hear it," my mother snapped. Frustrated, Linda turned to her for support, but instead of comforting her, our mother just looked away. Suddenly, Linda lost control. "Doesn't anyone support me?" she screamed, grabbing our mother's hair. My father rushed in, trying to break up the chaos. Amid all the noise, Adam calmly stepped forward and got everyone's attention. "Honestly, you're not my type, Linda," he said bluntly. "I respect you as Jessica's sister, but that's it. I don't want to have much to do with you. And that look you always give me? It actually makes me uncomfortable." His words hit like a slap. My sister froze, while my parents stood speechless. "But Adam, what about everything you said earlier?" Linda asked, her voice trembling. "Please stop acting so casually with someone else's husband," I cut in. "There was never a chance. He was never going to fall for you. That should have been the end of it." But as I watched my sister take slow steps toward Adam, her face pale, I blocked her path. "We have a family. We are happy together," I said firmly. She stopped in her tracks and turned to me, her face twisting in anger. "You tricked me," she shouted. I sighed. "Linda, how could you believe that someone who hasn't contacted you for 14 years is in love with you? Isn't that unrealistic?" Her face turned red, and tears welled in her eyes. I didn't hold back. "Even if you were a great catch, maybe. But no one is interested in someone who has no job, depends on their parents, and can't even take care of themselves. Mom has always done everything for you. That's not attractive." Behind me, Adam let out a quiet chuckle, understanding how ridiculous the situation was. Realizing the truth, Linda broke down into loud sobs. My parents, who had spoiled her all her life, tried to comfort her, but they looked lost, as if they were only now seeing the truth. "I'm not giving Adam to you, Linda. Let it go," I said firmly. Her crying grew louder, the way a child cries when they don't get what they want. "Take this as a lesson," I continued. "And don't ever try to involve yourself in our lives again. No matter what problems you have in the future, don't expect any help from us." For the first time in my life, I felt free. I slowly closed the front door. When my children asked what had happened, I smiled and said lightly, "It's Halloween season, so it seems a ghost showed up early." My eldest child laughed and said, "Should we get rid of the ghost?" I waved off the idea, but honestly, it felt strangely real. My sister's loud wailing outside had sounded just like a restless spirit. Another 5 years passed, and my sister remained single. She did manage to find a job, but her inappropriate behavior eventually got her fired. She rushed into marriage plans, but her attitude caused so many problems that she was even banned from matchmaking events. At this rate, it seems she may stay single forever. Meanwhile, my parents are still working part-time, tirelessly saving money for her. I think they've finally realized they can't depend on her to take care of them when they grow older. I hope they understand now that spoiling her all these years has its consequences. As for me, I've been lucky. Thanks to my husband's stable job and my children's academic success, I don't have to worry about school fees. Sometimes, I do wonder if having a job outside the home would help me burn off the extra weight I tend to gain during the holidays. My daughter, who is naturally slim and now going through a growth spurt, has started talking about dieting. But I always tell her, wait until you're older, like me. There's no rush. My 3 sons have a passion for dancing. Recently, they performed at a local event and won several awards. Full of confidence, they now dream of joining BTS one day. I secretly hope the band stays together long enough for them to have a real chance at making that dream come true. We often get visits from my in-laws, who are like real parents to me. The time we spend together is filled with love and laughter, especially over delicious meals. With spring break coming up, we're planning a relaxing spa trip as a family. We're all looking forward to spending quality time together. Even though my past had its struggles, my life now is filled with happiness. I have a loving husband, wonderful children, and strong family bonds. I cherish every moment and look forward to many more years of health, joy, and togetherness with my loved ones. My name is Sydney, and for as long as I can remember, I have always been the one people forget about in my family. It wasn't always obvious, but looking back, the signs were there from the beginning. My younger sister, Julie, was like a shining star from the moment she was born. With her golden curls and big smiles, she had our parents wrapped around her little finger. But me? I was the quiet one, more interested in my chemistry set than making friends. I still remember my 11th birthday. I had been hoping for a new microscope and had been dropping hints for weeks. Instead, I got a frilly dress that made me look like a cupcake. But Mom, I hate dresses, I complained. Nonsense. You look just like Julie, she said, smiling, not understanding why I was upset. As we got older, the difference between us only grew. Julie moved through school easily, charming everyone with her looks and personality, while I focused on my books and science projects. One night at dinner, Mom excitedly said, "Did you hear? Julie has been nominated for prom queen." "That's great," I said, trying to sound happy. "I won first place in the science fair today." "Oh, that's nice, dear," Dad said, barely paying attention. Then he turned back to Julie. "So, princess, have you picked out your dress yet?" And that's how it always was. No matter how big my achievements were, they never seemed to matter as much as Julie's latest success, even if it was something small. My senior year, I worked for months on a project about sustainable biofuels for the state science fair. When they announced the winners, I couldn't believe it. First place goes to Sydney Jake. I was overjoyed. Finally, this was something my parents couldn't ignore, or at least that's what I thought. "That's great, honey," Mom said when I told her. But then she added, "We can't come to the award ceremony. Julie has a dance recital that day, and you know how important that is to her." And just like that, my big moment was forgotten. I watched as they fussed over Julie's costume and makeup while my trophy sat on a shelf, gathering dust. It was a hard truth to accept, but I was getting used to it. When college acceptance letters started arriving, I could barely hold in my excitement. A full scholarship to a top university, it was more than I ever hoped for.
Mom, Dad.
I got in. I ran into the living room, waving the letter. A full scholarship and everything. Mom looked up from her magazine. "That's nice, dear. Julie, didn't you say you needed help picking a prom dress?" Just like that, my big moment was ignored again. "But it's a full scholarship," I said again, my voice quieter this time. Dad patted my shoulder, without much thought. "Good job, kiddo. Julie, princess, let's go shopping. You can't show up to prom in just anything, right?" I watched as they all piled into the car, my acceptance letter crumpled in my hand. I was used to this feeling, but it still hurt. Even though my family didn't make a big deal about it, I packed my bags and left for college, with high hopes. For the first time, I was free from Julie's shadow, free to just be me. College was a fresh start. Suddenly, my love for science wasn't weird or boring. It was respected and even admired. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make the most of this opportunity. Meanwhile, Julie followed the path our parents had always imagined for her. She went to a local community college, more interested in parties than classes. "College is so hard," she whined during one of our rare phone calls. "I don't know how you do it, Sydney." I wanted to tell her that maybe if she spent less time partying and more time studying, she'd find it easier. But instead, I just gave her some vague encouragement and changed the subject. Then, in my second year, Julie dropped a big surprise. "I'm engaged," she squealed over the phone. "Paul proposed last night. Isn't it romantic?" Paul, her high school boyfriend. The same guy who once asked me if science was like really hard and stuff. "That's great, Julie," I said, forcing some excitement into my voice. "Have you set a date?" "We're thinking right after graduation," she gushed. "Oh, Sydney, it's going to be perfect. You'll be my maid of honor, won't you?" The wedding was exactly what you'd expect. Julie looked stunning, Paul looked uncomfortable in his tux, and I stood there in a frilly pink dress, smiling for the pictures. "Isn't this perfect?" Mom whispered to me during the reception. This is what every mother dreams of for her daughter. I wanted to ask if she had ever dreamed of anything for me, but I kept quiet. This was Julie's day, after all. I focused on my studies and later on my career, while Julie's life played out exactly how her parents had always dreamed. Within a year of her wedding, she had big news. "I'm going to be a grandmother." Mom squealed over the phone. "Oh, Sydney, isn't it wonderful?" I murmured a polite congratulations, already expecting the question that always followed. "When are you going to settle down, Sydney? When will you give us grandchildren?" 10 months later, Erica was born, a tiny bundle wrapped in pink, crying loudly. I flew home for the weekend, playing the role of the loving aunt while ignoring the not-so-subtle hints from my parents. "You know, Sydney," Dad said while bouncing Erica on his knee, "you're not getting any younger. Don't you want this for yourself?" I clenched my teeth and forced a smile. "I'm focused on my career right now, Dad." Mom shook her head. "Careers are fine, dear, but family is what really matters." I wanted to remind her that they had never cared much about my career before. But instead, I just smiled and changed the subject. 3 years later, Julie had another baby, Nick. Once again, I played the devoted aunt, all while dodging more questions about why I didn't have a family of my own. Meanwhile, I was making real progress in my career as a biotechnologist. The long hours and hard work paid off, and by the time I turned 31, I had been promoted to senior researcher. When I told my parents, their response was a distracted, "That's nice, dear," as they cooed over new pictures of Erica and Nick. Around this time, I decided to buy a house. While my coworkers spent money on fancy cars and vacations, I had been saving carefully. When I finally found the perfect place, a beautiful 2-bedroom house in a great neighborhood, I was beyond excited. "Mom, Dad, I bought a house," I announced during our next phone call. There was a long pause. "A house," Mom repeated. "By yourself?" "Yes, by myself," I said, my excitement fading a little. "It's a great investment but it's such a big house for one person," Mom interrupted. "What will you do with all that space?" I sighed. "I'll enjoy it, Mom. It's mine." "Well," she said, clearly unimpressed, "I suppose if that's what you want."
Oh.
"Did I tell you Erica lost her first tooth yesterday?" And just like that, the conversation shifted back to Julie and her kids. The months after I bought my house were busy with work and getting settled. I spent my free time decorating, making each room feel like home. During this time, I started noticing a change in my family. My parents didn't call as often, and when they did, something felt off in their voices. One evening, Mom called me. "Sydney, dear," she said in an overly sweet tone. "We're having a family dinner next week. You'll come, won't you? We need to talk." I agreed, but I had a bad feeling. In my family, "we need to talk" usually meant trouble. On the night of the dinner, I pulled into my parents' driveway, feeling uneasy. Julie's car was already there, and I could hear Erica and Nick laughing inside. Dinner was tense. My parents kept exchanging looks. Julie was unusually quiet, and her husband, Paul, kept clearing his throat like he wanted to say something but didn't. Finally, as we finished dessert, Dad cleared his throat. "Sydney, we need to talk about something important." Here comes, I thought. "What's up, Dad?" He glanced at Mom, who nodded as if encouraging him to continue. "Well, you see, sweetie, we've been thinking, that big house of yours, it's really too much space for just one person." I felt my stomach tighten. "Dad, we've talked about this. I love my house. It's mine." "Yes, but," he hesitated, looking uncomfortable. Mom took over. "What your father is trying to say is that Julie and her family need more space. The kids are growing, and their apartment is getting too small." I turned to Julie, who was suddenly very focused on her plate. "Okay."
And
Mom's voice became even sweeter. "And since you're single and don't have children, we think you should give your house to Julie and her family. Just hand them the keys and move out." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I looked around, waiting for someone to laugh and say it was all a joke. But no one did. They were all waiting for my answer. "You can't be serious," I finally said. "Now, Sydney," Mom said, her tone changing to one she used when I was being difficult. "Don't be selfish. Julie needs the space more than you do." "Selfish," I repeated, my voice rising. How is it selfish to keep the house I worked hard for and paid for? It's your duty as a sister to help in times of need, Dad added. I turned to Julie, who was still avoiding my eyes. And what do you have to say about this? She shrugged and finally looked at me. Well, it would be nice to have more space for the kids. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own family was asking me to give up my home, acting like I was the unreasonable one for refusing. No, I said firmly, standing up. Absolutely not. I'm not giving up my house. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. As I walked out, my father called after me. Think about it, Sydney. Families should come first. The days after that awful family dinner felt like a blur of shock and anger. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, unable to believe they had the nerve to ask me for something so outrageous. My phone kept buzzing with calls and messages from my parents and Julie, but I ignored them all. On the third day, as I was trying to focus on work, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Thinking it wasn't my family, I answered. Hello, is this Sydney? A woman's voice spoke, sounding disapproving. Yes, who's this? This is your Aunt Kate. I can't believe what I'm hearing about you, young lady. Your poor sister needs a home for her children, and you are living all alone in that big house? Shame on you. I felt my blood pressure rise. Aunt Kate, that's not. In my day, she continued, cutting me off, family helped family. We didn't hoard our resources like selfish misers. I'm not hoarding anything, I snapped. It's my house. I bought it with my money. Well, she huffed, if you're not going to use all that space, you should at least think about donating your eggs. It's not like you need them anyway. I almost dropped the phone. Excuse me? You heard me, she said matter-of-factly. You're not getting any younger, you know. Tick-tock. I hung up without another word, my hands shaking with anger.
How dare she?
How dare any of them? But it didn't stop there. Over the next few days, my phone was flooded with calls and messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Each one had something to say about my house or my life choices. My great-aunt Anna left a voicemail. Sydney, dear, it's your great-aunt Anna. I just wanted to say, it's not too late to find a nice man and settle down. Then you'd need that big house. It was never-ending. Every time my phone buzzed, it was another guilt trip, another opinion I didn't ask for. I started dreading checking my phone, wincing every time it lit up. To escape, I threw myself into work, staying late at the lab just so I wouldn't have to go home to more messages. Then, one of those late nights, I got sick. Nothing serious, just a bad cold, but bad enough that my boss insisted I take a few days off to rest. So, there I was curled up on my couch with a box of tissues, feeling miserable, both physically and emotionally. My phone had finally been quiet for a few hours, and I was just starting to relax. Then I heard it. A noise at my front door. It sounded like someone was messing with the lock. My heart started racing. Was someone trying to break in? I got up as quietly as I could and crept toward the door. Peeking through the window, I saw figures on my porch. Familiar figures. I yanked the door open, making the people outside jump in surprise. What the hell are you doing? Standing there, caught red-handed, were my parents and Julie. They looked frozen, like deer in headlights, staring at me as if they had been caught doing something they knew was wrong. Mom was the first to recover. Sydney, dear, we were just worried about you. You haven't been answering your phone. So, you decided to break into my house? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad at least had the sense to look embarrassed. We didn't think you'd be home. We thought you'd be at work. And that makes it okay? I was practically shouting now. What were you planning to do? Move Julie in while I was gone? Julie, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. Sydney, you're being dramatic. We were just going to wait for you to come home. Then, for the first time, I noticed the car parked behind them. It was loaded with boxes and furniture. My blood ran cold. You are going to move in, I said, my voice flat. You are actually going to move into my house without my permission. Mom sighed, her voice turning into that patronizing tone I had heard all my life. Sydney, we've talked about this. Julie needs the space more than you do. We thought if we just took the initiative. You thought wrong. I cut her off. This is my house. Mine. I bought it with my own money. Money I earned through hard work. You have no right to it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. My neighbors, the Jakes, were peering through their window, clearly concerned. Mr. Jake caught my eye and held up his phone, mouthing, "Police?" I nodded. Turning back to my family, I said, "I've called the police. You need to leave."
Now.
Dad scoffed. "You wouldn't. Your own family?" As if on cue, the sound of sirens filled the air. My family's faces turned pale. The police car pulled up, and 3 officers stepped out. One of them looked at the scene with suspicion. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "Yes, officer. These people were trying to break into my house." Mom gasped. "Sydney, how could you?" The officers turned to my family. "Is this true?" Dad started stammering, trying to explain, but the officer raised a hand to stop him. "Sir, trying to enter someone's home without permission is a serious offense. I'm going to have to ask you all to leave immediately." I stood in the doorway, shaking, as the officers escorted them off my property. As they walked away, Julie turned and called over her shoulder, "You'll regret this, Sydney. You'll end up old and alone." I slammed the door shut and slid down onto the floor, leaning against it. Tears spilled down my face, a mix of anger, hurt, and relief. Then everything went silent. No more phone calls. No more guilt-tripping messages. It was like I had been completely cut off from the family. A part of me felt relieved, but another part ached. As broken as it was, they were still my family. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message. It was from Aunt Sophie, Mom's sister. We hadn't spoken in years, not since she and Mom had a falling out over some old family drama. "Meet me tomorrow at Café Blue at 5 p.m. Curious and desperate for even one ally, I agreed. The next day, I sat across from Aunt Sophie in a cozy corner of Café Blue. She looked older than I remembered, but her eyes were still sharp and kind. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Sydney, I'm so sorry for everything you've been through," she said. "Your mother called me, trying to get me on her side. But there's more to this story than you know. That's why I wanted to meet you." I leaned in, my curiosity growing. "What do you mean?" Aunt Sophie sighed. "Your parents and Julie, they're in serious financial trouble." I frowned.
What? How?
She gave me a sad look. Julie and Paul have been living beyond their means for years. Expensive cars, designer clothes, fancy vacations, all bought with credit. I shook my head in disbelief. But why? How did it get this bad? "It's worse than that," Aunt Sophie continued. "Paul has a gambling problem. A serious one. He's been secretly draining their accounts for years." Everything started to make sense. The desperate attempt to take my house, the constant pressure from my parents. I swallowed hard. "What about Mom and Dad?" Aunt Sophie's face turned grim. "They lost a huge amount of money in a pyramid scheme a few years ago. They've been struggling ever since. Their plan was to move in with Julie and Paul as soon as they got your house." I sat back, shocked. "How do you know all this?" I asked. Aunt Sophie sighed. "I work at the bank where they all have accounts," she explained. "I noticed some strange activity and started looking into it. When I confronted your mother about it, she cut me out of the family." My head was spinning. All this time, while I had been working hard and saving, my family had been digging themselves into a hole. And when things got bad, they tried to drag me down with them. "Sydney," Aunt Sophie said gently, "I know this is a lot to take in, but I think it's time we do something about this. If you're willing, I have an idea." The investigation begins. Armed with everything Aunt Sophie had told me, we decided to dig deeper. We hired a private investigator, a tough and no-nonsense woman named Chris. She came highly recommended. For weeks, we waited anxiously as Chris did her work. Finally, she called us in for a meeting. What she revealed left us speechless. The shocking truth. Paul, Julie's husband, had been living the double life. He was having an affair with none other than my cousin Michelle, Uncle Jacob's daughter. He's been secretly sending her money for months, Chris explained, laying out bank statements and hotel receipts. Expensive gifts, weekend getaways, you name it. I felt sick. But where did he get the money? I asked, though deep down I already knew the answer. Chris's face turned serious. From his gambling wins, and from your parents. Aunt Sophie and I exchanged stunned glances. The betrayal ran deeper than we ever imagined. The family gathering. We decided to hold a family gathering at my house. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same house they had tried to steal from me would now be the place where everything fell apart. On the day of the gathering, I watched as my family arrived, their faces full of curiosity and smugness. They probably thought I had finally given in to their demands. Once everyone was seated, I stood up. My heart was pounding, but I was ready. I called you all here today because there are some things you need to know. I began. Then I laid everything out. The financial troubles. The gambling addiction. The affair. With each revelation, I watched their faces drain of color. Julie jumped up, tears running down her face. It's not true, she screamed, before collapsing into sobs. Paul, tell them it's not true. But Paul was already halfway to the door. Uncle Jacob, his face twisted in anger, grabbed him by the collar. You son of a, he growled. That's my daughter you've been messing around with. The fallout. My parents sat frozen in shock. Not because of what they had done, but because their financial ruin was now exposed. The same relatives who had judged me so harshly suddenly changed their tune. We had no idea, Aunt Kate muttered. Sydney, we're so sorry, someone else whispered. As chaos unfolded around me, for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I felt strangely calm. The truth was finally out. All the lies and manipulations had been exposed. In the weeks that followed, our family was completely turned upside down. Julie, unable to forgive Paul for cheating, filed for divorce. With nowhere else to go, she and the kids moved back in with our parents. But that didn't last long. The bank foreclosed on their house, forcing them to move into a small rented apartment. 6 people crammed into a space smaller than my living room. Letting go. I watched everything unfold from a distance. After many sleepless nights and lots of soul-searching, I made the difficult decision to cut ties with my family. You're doing the right thing, Sydney, Aunt Sophie told me over coffee one afternoon. It's not easy, but it's necessary for your mental health and happiness. Aunt Sophie had become my rock. She was the family I chose when my own had let me down. Our weekly coffee dates became the best part of my new life. A new chapter. As the weeks turned into months, I finally settled into a new routine. Without my family's constant drama and demands, I had time to focus on myself. But with that came a surprising realization. I was lonely. You know, Aunt Sophie said one day, there's a whole world out there beyond work and home. Why don't you try something new? With her encouragement, I joined a local rock climbing group. It was way out of my comfort zone, but as I strapped on the harness for the first time, I felt a thrill of excitement I hadn't felt in years. That's where I met Mark. He was helping another climber, his strong hands skillfully handling the rope. When he turned and gave me a warm smile, my heart skipped a beat. First time? He asked, noticing how nervously I was fidgeting with the gear. Is it that obvious? I laughed. We started talking, and I was immediately drawn to his kind eyes and easygoing nature. As we chatted, I learned he was a wildlife photographer with a passion for capturing nature's beauty. For the first time in years, I felt truly happy. I felt a spark of excitement at the idea of a real relationship. Mark was kind, adventurous, and most importantly, he understood complicated family situations in a way few people did. We started dating, and our shared love for nature and understanding of family struggles brought us even closer. Before I knew it, we were talking about marriage, something I had once thought was impossible for me. A new kind of family. Through it all, Aunt Sophie remained my biggest supporter. She became the mother figure I had always wished for, but never had. One day, she sat me down, her eyes filled with emotion. Sydney, she said softly, I want you to know something. I've changed my will. I'm leaving everything to you. I hugged her, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't believe how much my life had changed. The path hadn't been easy, but it had led me to where I was meant to be. With Aunt Sophie's love, Mark's support, and a strength I never knew I had, I was finally ready to face whatever the future held. I never knew how close I came to never being born. Years later, my mom told me a story that shocked me. When she first found out she was pregnant with me, she wasn't sure they could afford to have a baby. My dad didn't make much money at the time, and they were barely managing to get by. They lived paycheck to paycheck, worrying about rent, food, and bills. Bringing a child into that situation seemed impossible. But then something unexpected happened. My dad's parents, my grandparents, found out about the pregnancy. Instead of being worried, they were overjoyed. Not only did they support my parents emotionally, but they also helped them in a way that changed everything. They gave my mom and dad their house, a nice home in a safe neighborhood, with good schools nearby. They also promised to help financially whenever it was needed. It was because of them that my parents felt ready to have me. I was born in that house, and for the first few years of my life, everything was wonderful. My grandparents were always around. They picked me up, played with me, and looked after me when my mom was at work. They took me to the park, read me bedtime stories, and even sneaked me treats when my mom wasn't looking. They made me feel special and loved. When I turned 6 and started school, my grandparents still took care of me. Every day they picked me up after school, and we had little adventures. Sometimes we got ice cream. Other times, we went to the playground. Those days were some of the happiest in my life. I felt safe, loved, and cared for. But then, everything changed. I still remember the night it all fell apart. I was supposed to be asleep, but loud voices woke me up. My mom and dad were having a huge argument. I couldn't understand everything they were saying, but I heard words like betrayal and, "How could you?" Their voices were filled with anger and hurt. Then, I heard the front door slam shut. Curious and scared, I peeked out of my window. I saw my dad walking unsteadily toward his car, holding a bottle in his hand. Later, I learned it was whiskey. My heart pounded as I watched him get in and start the car. The tires screeched as he sped off into the night. That was the last time I ever saw my dad alive. The next morning, 3 police officers came to our house. I didn't understand much, but I knew something was wrong when my mom collapsed to the floor, sobbing. The officers told her my dad had been in a car accident. He lost control and crashed. He didn't survive. The funeral was confusing for me. I didn't fully understand what was happening. I just held my mom's hand while people cried around me. My grandparents hugged me tightly, their faces wet with tears. I didn't know what to say or do. After the funeral, everything started changing too quickly. My mom seemed to move on fast, too fast. Within months, she had a new man in her life. Before I knew it, they were married, and she was expecting another baby. "You're going to have a little sister, Linda," Mom told me, her eyes shining with excitement. "Isn't that wonderful?" I nodded, but I didn't know how to feel. Everything was happening so fast. I missed my dad. I missed how things used to be. I also noticed something strange. Grandma and Grandpa stopped visiting. They had always been around, and now they were just gone. One day, I finally asked my mom, "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa come to see me anymore?" But she didn't answer. She just looked away. One day, I finally asked, "Mom, why don't Grandma and Grandpa visit us anymore?" Her face turned cold. "They don't want anything to do with us anymore, Linda," she said firmly. "They left because I started a new family." Then, after a moment, her expression softened. "At least they gave us this house and helped pay for your school. We should be grateful for that." A few months after Mom remarried, my little sister was born. I remember Mom saying she was born early, but even as a child, something about that didn't seem right. Still, there was too much happening in my life for me to think about it for long. My new stepfather, Kevin, worked as a driver, and Mom kept her job as a salesperson. We weren't rich, but we had what we needed, or at least that's what I was told. But from the very beginning, I could tell that Kevin didn't like me. At dinner, he would glare at me across the table, his jaw tightening whenever I spoke. "Can you keep that kid quiet?" he would snap at my mom. "I'm trying to eat in peace." Mom would quickly try to calm him down. "Linda, honey, why don't you go to your room? I'll bring you your dinner later." At first, I didn't understand why she was sending me away, but soon it became normal. Kevin got angry often, and I seemed to be the one who made him the most upset. When Mom wasn't around, he would say cruel things to me. His face twisted with anger as he muttered, "You're nothing but a freeloader. A burden. You know that, right?" I didn't respond. I just nodded and swallowed my tears because what else could I do? The way Kevin treated me and the way he treated my little sister were completely different. With her, he was kind and loving. He bounced her on his knee, showered her with gifts, and spoke to her in a sweet, playful voice. "There's my little angel," he would coo. "Daddy's got a surprise for you." It made my stomach turn. Mom, desperate to keep Kevin happy, started finding ways to keep me out of sight. Whenever Kevin came home, she would quickly send me to my room and lock the door behind me. I would sit there for hours, listening to the sounds of laughter, conversation, and clinking dishes from the other side of the door. I didn't understand why I had to eat alone, why I couldn't move freely in my own house, why I was treated like I didn't belong. As I got older, it only got worse. Family holidays? I wasn't invited. Trips to visit Kevin's friends or relatives. I was left behind. Even when people came to our house, I was told to stay in my room and be quiet. "We don't want to upset Kevin," Mom would say, her eyes pleading. "You know how he gets." And I did know. I had seen his anger. I had heard the crashes and bangs when something made him mad. So I stayed quiet. I stayed out of the way. I became a ghost in my own home. The only time I felt a little bit normal was when Mom took me with her to run errands or go shopping. But even then, it wasn't fun or relaxing. It was always rushed, always serious. She never let me wander or enjoy myself. "We can't take too long," Mom would say, checking her watch nervously. "Kevin will be home soon." As the years passed, I became quieter. I kept to myself more and more. At school, I barely spoke to anyone. I felt invisible. But in my room, inside my imagination, I could escape. I created stories in my mind, big adventures where I was the hero, where people cared about me and wanted me around. When I turned 17, something unexpected happened. Since I spent most of my time alone in my room, I had become really good at using the internet. It was my way to escape from real life. One day, while browsing online, I found a publishing company looking for new writers, people who could create stories for children and teenagers. On a whim, I sent in a few of my stories. I didn't expect much, but to my surprise, they loved them. Before I knew it, I was working with them regularly. I wrote stories and even helped create educational apps for kids. For the first time in years, I felt proud of myself. My ideas were being published, people liked my work, and best of all, I was making my own money. I saved every penny, watching my bank account grow. It was the first time I had something that was truly mine, and I held onto it tightly. One day, after receiving a big payment, I felt brave. I wanted to share my success with Mom. We were alone in the kitchen. Kevin was away on a long drive, and my sister was at a friend's house. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking a little. "I have something to tell you." She looked up, curious. "I've been writing for a publishing company. I've been making stories and helping with apps. And, oh well, I'm making pretty good money." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Really? Oh, Linda, that's wonderful. I always knew you were a smart girl." Hearing her praise, which was so rare these days, made my heart warm. But then something changed. Her expression shifted. She looked thoughtful, almost calculating. "You know," she said, leaning in slightly, "this is actually perfect timing. We've been having some financial troubles lately." My heart sank. I should have known better than to expect her to just be happy for me. "The thing is," she continued, "this house is big, and taking care of it is expensive. And raising you hasn't been cheap either." I felt like I had been slapped. Hadn't I been the one locked away, treated like an outsider in my own home? How could I have been a burden? Mom avoided my eyes as she spoke again. Remember that college fund we set up for you? She hesitated. Well, we had to use that money to keep the house. You understand, right? I stared at her, my stomach twisting. But now that you're earning money, you can take care of yourself, right? I nodded slowly, unable to speak. My throat felt tight, and my chest ached. That's my girl, Mom said, patting my hand like she had just given me good news. Oh, and one more thing. Kevin and I have been talking, and we think it's best if you move out after you graduate. We're planning to fix up your room for your sister. She needs more space, you understand. I stared at her, my mind struggling to process her words. Move out? But where would I go? What? I finally managed to whisper. Mom just shrugged and turned away, already done with the conversation. You're a smart girl, Linda. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You have some savings now, right? And with that, she walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone. The weight of her words crashed down on me. I was being kicked out. The money I had worked so hard to save, the money I thought would help me go to college, was gone. And worst of all, my own mother didn't seem to care where I ended up. The months leading up to graduation passed in a blur of stress and worry. During the day, I focused on school, determined to at least finish high school strong. At night, I worked tirelessly on my writing, trying to save every dollar I could. But no matter how hard I worked, it wasn't enough. College tuition, rent, books, it all added up to way more than I had. No matter how I did the math, I couldn't make it work. My dreams of going to college were slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. One night, I tried talking to Mom again, hoping she might change her mind. Mom, I said hesitantly, I've been looking at college costs, and I don't think I can. She cut me off before I could finish. Linda, we've been over this, she said, her voice cold.
You're on your own now.
You'll figure it out. Graduation day came and went. I should have felt happy, proud of myself. But I didn't. I felt empty. The next morning, Mom appeared at my door, holding 2 cardboard boxes. Time to pack up, Linda, she said, her voice fake and cheerful. Your sister is so excited about her new room. I stared at the boxes, my heart sinking. There was no discussion, no second chances. It was happening. Fighting back tears, I packed up my life in those boxes. When I finished, Mom helped me carry them to the front door. I stood there on the porch, my few belongings at my feet, waiting, hoping for her to say something, anything that would make this feel less cruel. Instead, she gave me a quick, awkward hug. Good luck out there, she said. And then she shut the door. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen. Then, taking a deep breath, I picked up my boxes and walked away from the only home I had ever known. With what little money I had, I rented a tiny studio apartment. It wasn't in the best area, and the sound of sirens often kept me awake at night. But at least it was mine. I had no choice but to delay college for a year. I needed to focus on work if I wanted to survive. Desperate for more work, I reached out to my contacts at the publishing company, practically begging for any opportunities. To my relief, they were happy to help. We've been really impressed with your work, Linda, my editor told me. How would you feel about writing children's books for us? I immediately said yes. It was the best chance I had. Soon, I was working nonstop, writing stories and creating illustrations. The work was tough, but I loved it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was good at something. I had a purpose. Living alone wasn't easy, but I had been taking care of myself for a long time. I learned how to budget my money, cook simple meals, and use public transportation. Slowly, I started to find my way. I even made a few friends, people in my building who were also trying to make it on their own. We weren't family, but we looked out for each other, and that meant a lot. Still, no matter how hard I worked, saving for college seemed impossible. Every time I managed to put some money aside, something unexpected happened. My apartment had a plumbing problem, my laptop broke and needed repairs, or I got sick and had to pay for a doctor's visit. Each new expense ate into my savings, making my dream of college feel more and more out of reach. Then one day, Exactly a year after I had left home, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and froze. It was a number I never thought I'd see again. I answered hesitantly. "Linda, sweetie. How are you?" My mother's voice was unusually sweet, almost too nice. "I've missed you so much. Why don't you come visit us this weekend?" Something felt off. My gut told me there was more to this than just missing me. But despite my doubts, curiosity won. I packed a small bag, unsure of what to expect. As soon as I arrived at my old house, my suspicions were confirmed. Mom was overly affectionate, hugging me tightly and asking endless questions about my life. Her smile seemed forced, like she was pretending to be the loving mother she never was. "Oh, Linda," she gushed, "you must be so tired from your trip. Why don't you sleep in your sister's room tonight? She can take the guest room." Confused, I nodded. My sister, now a teenager, rolled her eyes but didn't argue. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of voices downstairs. Something about them seemed familiar. Curious, I got out of bed and made my way to the kitchen. The moment I stepped inside, I froze. Sitting at the table were three people I hadn't seen in years, but I recognized them immediately. My grandparents. My dad's parents. Grandma's eyes lit up when she saw me. "Linda. Oh, look how much you've grown." I stood there in shock as they explained why they had come. "We're moving into a nursing home soon," Grandpa said, his voice rough with emotion. "But before we go, we wanted to see you, to make sure you're doing well." "Yes," Grandma added warmly. "Tell us, dear, how is college? What are you studying?" I opened my mouth, unsure of what to say, when Mom quickly jumped in. "Oh, Linda is doing wonderfully in school, aren't you, honey?" she said with a fake smile. "Top of her class, just like always." I stared at her in shock. The lies rolled off her tongue so easily, as if they were the truth. My grandparents looked happy to hear it, but they still had questions. "That's wonderful," Grandma said. "But could we talk to Linda alone for a bit? We'd love to catch up with her." For a brief moment, I saw panic flash across Mom's face. "Oh, I don't think that's necessary," she said quickly. "Linda is quite busy, aren't you, dear? In fact, we should probably wrap this up soon." Before I could say anything, she steered the conversation to other topics, talking nonstop, so I wouldn't get a chance to speak. As the visit came to an end, I felt a gentle touch on my arm. Grandma pressed something into my hand, a small business card. The moment my grandparents left, Mom's whole attitude changed. The fake warmth disappeared, replaced by the cold, distant expression I knew too well. "Well, that's done," she said briskly, clearing the table. "You should probably head home now, Linda. I'm sure you have things to do." I stood there for a second, my heart sinking. The kindness she had shown in front of my grandparents was gone. It had all been an act. She didn't care. Without another word, she pushed me toward the door. The business card felt heavy in my pocket as I walked home. The moment I stepped into my tiny apartment, I pulled it out, my hands shaking. I stared at the number for a long time before finally dialing, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hello." A familiar, warm voice answered. "Grandma, it's Linda," I whispered. For a moment, there was silence, then a mix of happiness and concern filled her voice. "Oh, Linda, sweetheart. How are you?" We talked for a long time. She asked me about my life, and for the first time in years, I felt like someone actually cared. Before I knew it, we had made plans for her and Grandpa to visit me the next day. I gave her my apartment address, feeling both excited and nervous. As soon as I hung up, I jumped into action. My small studio apartment wasn't much, but I wanted to make it as nice as possible. I scrubbed every inch, organized my few belongings, and even found a vase for fresh flowers from the corner store. That night, I barely slept. Instead, I spent hours in my tiny kitchen, carefully preparing lunch for the next day. I even decided to bake Grandma's favorite cookies, snickerdoodles, using a recipe I found online. Morning came too fast. Just as I was pulling the last batch of cookies from the oven, there was a knock at the door. Taking a deep breath, I went to answer it. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my shirt, and went to open the door. There they stood, Grandma and Grandpa. For a moment, none of us spoke. Years of separation stood between us, heavy and unspoken. Then, Grandma stepped forward and pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, Linda," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Look at you, all grown up." I felt my chest tighten, but I hugged her back. I led them inside, and as they looked around my tiny apartment, I saw confusion flicker across their faces. "Linda," Grandpa said slowly, "why are you living here? Your mother told us you were still living in the house." Before I could explain, they started telling me a story that changed everything. "We always wanted to be part of your life," Grandma said, her eyes filling with tears. "But your mother wouldn't let us. She kept us away." Then they told me the truth about the night my father died, the real story. Mom had been unfaithful. She had already been pregnant with my sister when my father found out. He was devastated and wanted a divorce. But before anything could happen, the accident took his life. I sat there in shock as they continued. "The house you grew up in, the one your mother and Kevin still live in, it's yours," Grandma said. "Your father left it to you in his will." My stomach twisted. "We've been sending money every month for your care," she went on, squeezing my hand. "After you graduated, we sent even more, thinking you were in college and needed extra support." The room felt like it was spinning. All this time, I had been struggling just to survive. I had been working nonstop, counting every dollar, trying to save for college. And yet, there had been money for me all along. A house in my name. Grandpa's voice broke through my thoughts. "We wanted to make sure you were doing well, that you were comfortable in the house. That's why we came to visit yesterday." I sat there, my mind racing, as the weight of their words sank in. Anger, betrayal, sadness, it all hit me at once. "I don't understand," I whispered. "All this time, there was money for me? A house that belonged to me." Grandma squeezed my hand tighter. "Tell us everything, Linda. We need to know what really happened." So I told them. I told them about my lonely childhood, how I had spent years locked away in my room, treated like a secret. I told them about Kevin's cruelty, about always feeling like I didn't belong. I told them how the college money had been stolen, how I had been kicked out with nothing but a few boxes of my belongings. "I've been working nonstop," I said, my voice breaking. "Writing children's books. Living in this tiny apartment. Trying to save for college. I never knew anything about the money you sent." As I spoke, I watched my grandparents' faces change, from shock to pure fury. Grandpa's hands clenched into fists, his face turning red. "This is unacceptable," he growled.
What your mother did, it's theft.
"It's abuse." He looked me in the eyes, his voice firm. "We're going to make this right, Linda." My grandparents kept their promise. True to their word, they took action right away. They hired a lawyer, one of the best in the city. Over the next few weeks, I watched in amazement as they fought for me. The court case was intense. Mom and Kevin tried to make me look like a rebellious, ungrateful child who had run away. But the truth was clear. The bank records showed years of stolen money. Neighbors spoke about how I had been isolated, hidden away like I didn't exist. In the end, justice won. The judge ruled in my favor, evicting Mom and Kevin from the house that rightfully belonged to me. They were also ordered to pay back all the money my grandparents had sent for my care over the years. As we walked out of the courthouse, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, victory, and sadness. Yes, I had won. But at what cost? The only family I had ever known, broken as it was now gone forever. But I wasn't alone anymore. Grandma and Grandpa were determined to make up for lost time. They helped me move into my house. It still felt unreal to call it that. They also gave me money for college and spent hours with me, helping me choose the right school. In the end, I picked a college close to the nursing home where they were moving. It felt right to stay near them after all the years we had been apart. For a while, everything seemed perfect. I visited Grandma and Grandpa often, soaking up their love and stories. We played chess, watched old movies, and talked for hours. They told me all about my dad, the kind of person he was, the things he loved, filling in the missing pieces of my past. I finally felt like I belonged somewhere. But life, I was learning, had a cruel way of giving with one hand and taking with the other. Just as I was settling into my new life, just as I was finally happy, tragedy struck. Grandpa went first. A sudden heart attack. Quick and unexpected. Grandma followed just 3 months later. The doctors called it natural causes, but I knew better. She had lost her will to live without him. Once again, I was alone. The grief was unbearable. I had only just found them, only just started to heal. And now they were gone. I threw myself into my studies, trying to keep busy, trying not to think about the pain. But every holiday spent alone, every achievement I couldn't share with them, felt like a fresh wound. Years passed. Slowly, life started to take shape again. I graduated college with honors and got a job at a well-known publishing house, the same company that had given me my first opportunity as a teenager. With the money my grandparents had left me, I bought a cozy apartment close to work. For the first time in my life, I had a home that was truly mine. And for the first time, my future felt bright. I rented out my grandparents' house, my childhood home. The extra money gave me a steady income, something I had never had before. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. I had stability, a good job, good friends, and most importantly, I was happy. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. One Friday afternoon, my phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but I recognized it right away. My mother. A strange mix of curiosity and dread filled me as I hesitated, then answered. "Linda, sweetie." Her voice was overly sweet, dripping with fake affection. "How are you?" Before I could say anything, she launched into a sob story. My sister was pregnant. Her husband had abandoned her. Now she, Mom, and Kevin were all crammed into a tiny rented apartment, struggling to get by. "We have nowhere to go," Mom whimpered. "I was hoping, well, that house you own, your childhood home, could we maybe stay there? Just for a little while, until we get back on our feet." I sat in stunned silence as she went back and forth between begging and crying, using that same manipulative tone I knew too well from my childhood. "Please, Linda," she pleaded. "We're family. We need your help." Her words sent a flood of memories rushing back. The lonely nights locked in my room, the years of being ignored, the moment she kicked me out with nothing but a few boxes. I took a deep breath and finally spoke, my voice cold. "Family?" I said. "That's funny, Mom. Where was this family when you locked me away like I didn't exist? Where was it when you threw me out with nowhere to go?" "Linda, that's all in the past," she said quickly, her voice nervous. "No." I cut her off. "It's not in the past. It's right here, right now. The only reason you're calling me is because you need something. Just like always." I could almost hear her scrambling, trying to find the right words to pull me back in. But I wasn't that scared, helpless girl anymore. "You want my advice, Mom? Solve your own problems. Figure it out yourself. Isn't that what you told me when you kicked me out?" "Linda, please." "Good luck," I said, repeating the same empty words she had once told me. "You're going to need it." Before she could say another word, I hung up. My hands shook as I blocked her number, but I felt lighter, like a weight I had carried for years had finally lifted. For so long, I had carried the pain of her rejection, her neglect. But now I was free. The $15 million inheritance from our parents was going to be mine, at least that's what my sister believed. She always thought our parents favored her, claiming they loved her more than someone as plain as me. She never lifted a finger when it came to arranging their funeral after their sudden passing, yet the moment the service was over, she was eager to talk about money. The way she demanded her share was almost laughable. "Take it all if it means that much to you," I said, my voice steady. "But promise me one thing. Never contact me again." She smirked, shaking her head. "You don't get it, do you? You're the one being cut off, not me." With that, she let out a mocking laugh as I turned my back on her. I had already lost my parents, and now I was losing my sister too. But strangely, I felt nothing, no sadness, no regret. "My name is Kate. I'm 36 years old and work in an office. Our parents were entrepreneurs, always launching new businesses. Because of their success, my younger sister Haley and I had privileged lives, attending top private schools and prestigious universities. After graduation, I got a stable job and started planning my future. Haley, on the other hand, never even tried to find a real job. She floated from one temporary gig to another, living without any real goals. Despite her careless attitude, our parents always supported her. No matter how recklessly she spent their money, they kept funding her lifestyle. Meanwhile, they constantly reminded me to be responsible, to manage my finances wisely, and to secure my future. The double standard was obvious, but the reason was just as clear. Haley was beautiful. She had inherited all the best features from our family. Our mother's large, striking eyes with double eyelids, our father's sharp nose and perfect eyebrows, even our grandmother's naturally elegant figure. Wherever she went, people noticed her. She was charming, adored, and effortlessly popular. I, on the other hand, took after the less remarkable side of our family. My features were ordinary: my mother's small nose, my father's narrow eyes with single eyelids, and my grandfather's rather plain physique. While Haley turned heads with her beauty, I blended into the background. It had always been this way. And now, even in the face of something as serious as our parents' passing, Haley was still playing the role she had always known: the entitled, favored daughter. But this time, I wasn't going to play along. She could have everything: the money, the inheritance, the illusion of winning. But in the end, she was the one left behind. As a child, I was naturally shy and slow to connect with relatives. For 7 years, I was the beloved first grandchild, cherished by my family. But everything changed when Haley was born. She inherited all the best features from our parents and grandparents: big, bright eyes, delicate features, and an effortlessly beautiful presence. From the moment she arrived, the attention that once surrounded me shifted entirely to her. I adored Haley, though. As a toddler, she followed me everywhere, calling my name in her tiny voice. I took care of her, helping her with everything. It made me happy to have a little sister who looked up to me. But as she grew, so did the admiration from others. By the time she was in elementary school, she was so stunning that talent scouts approached her for modeling and entertainment gigs. Magazines wanted her, people adored her, and everywhere we went, she became the center of attention. At first, I didn't mind. But as I entered middle school, I started noticing the painful differences between us. Sometimes, when scouts came to sign Haley, they would glance at me as well, only to quickly lose interest. Her friends would make casual remarks about how different we looked, as if I was just an unfortunate comparison to her beauty. No matter what I did, I was always seen as Haley's less attractive sister. Even when I put effort into my appearance, wearing stylish clothes and carefully applying makeup, it didn't matter. Haley could be in a simple school tracksuit, laughing without a care in the world, and people would still find her more charming. I tried to watch my diet, making sure I ate healthily, yet Haley, who would snack on sweet pastries late at night, still had the better figure. It didn't take long for Haley to realize the power her beauty gave her. By high school, she had stopped being the sweet little sister who followed me around. Instead, she began using her looks as a weapon against me. Her teasing started off small, but it quickly became relentless. She would take my things and hide them just to watch me get frustrated. If I saved up my allowance to buy a nice dress, she would somehow end up wearing it first, claiming it as her own. And the worst part? She knew our parents would always take her side. Sometimes, she would go into my room, stage a dramatic scene by placing her clothes around, and then burst into tears, claiming I had stolen them. No matter how much I protested, our parents never doubted her for a second. "Kate, you're the older sister," they would say. "Don't be mean to Haley." Or worse, "Haley is just teasing you because she loves you. She's your little sister, so forgive her for being playful." It didn't matter what I said or did. In their eyes, Haley could do no wrong. And me? I was always the villain in a story I never even wrote. I started locking my door at night just to feel safe, but instead of support, I was scolded. "How can you not trust your own family?" my parents would say, completely ignoring why I felt the need to do it in the first place. I had endured enough. As soon as I graduated from university, I moved out and started living alone. Even when my parents wished for me to visit, I refused. I took on temporary jobs during the holidays just to avoid going back to that house. Distance was my only way to breathe. Then, for years later, everything changed. Our parents were killed in a sudden car accident. For the first time in years, Haley and I stood face to face at the funeral. She was in tears the entire time, sobbing as if the world had crumbled around her. I cried too, but unlike her, I handled the arrangements. There was no time to grieve properly. I had to deal with relatives, my parents' business partners, and the dozens of people who came to pay their respects. But amid the sorrow, there was an issue that couldn't be ignored. The inheritance. Haley and I were the only heirs. I knew exactly how that conversation would go before it even started. We met at our childhood home, sitting across from each other for the first time in years. The moment I brought up the estate, she wasted no time. "Our parents' estate is worth $15 million, she said, her voice dripping with confidence. "I'm taking it all. After all, they loved me more. I mean, it's obvious. Who would leave anything to someone as plain as you?" Then, with a smirk, she added, "Oh, do you need money for plastic surgery?" I didn't even react. "I don't want it," I said simply. Haley's face twisted in shock. "What?" "No matter how much I think about it, I don't want the inheritance," I repeated. I was exhausted, emotionally, mentally, physically. I hadn't even had time to mourn properly. Instead, I had spent days managing guests, answering condolences, and pretending not to hear the whispers. Are they really sisters? They look nothing alike. Every time someone said it, I saw the satisfaction in Haley's eyes. She enjoyed it, and that alone made me even more certain of my decision. "You can have all 15 million, I told her. "But there's one condition." At the mention of a condition, Haley tensed. Her eyes sharpened, wary of what I might say next. "I won't inherit anything," I clarified. "In exchange, I'm severing all ties with you today. From now on, we are no longer family. We won't contact each other, and we won't ask for help, ever." Haley looked stunned at first. But then, when she realized the terms were in her favor, a slow, triumphant grin spread across her face. $15 million and I get to cut you off?" she scoffed. "That's perfect. Why would I ever want to stay in touch with someone as ugly as you?" She crossed her arms, looking smug. "Just don't come crawling back when you need money." I ignored her laughter and walked out of that house for the last time. My family was gone, my parents, now my sister. But instead of sadness, all I felt was relief. For the first time in my life, I was free. 4 months later, my peace was shattered. Haley started calling me repeatedly. At first, I ignored her, but the calls kept coming. Since I used my phone for work, I couldn't just turn it off. Frustrated, I finally picked up. "Kate." Haley's voice came through the line, frantic and unsteady. "I need a favor." "I don't have a sister," I said firmly. "Stop calling me." I tried to hang up, but Haley's voice kept pouring through the phone. She didn't apologize for breaking our agreement. Instead, she ranted as if nothing had changed. "After Mom and Dad died, I tried to use their savings," she said, completely ignoring my frustration. "But a friend who works at City Hall asked if I had consulted anyone about the inheritance tax." I didn't respond, but she continued. "It's my inheritance, right? I mean, I'm their daughter, so their money should be mine. Why should I have to pay taxes just to receive my own father's money?" I sighed, rubbing my temples. "And my friend said I should talk to a lawyer, but I don't know any lawyers. I don't know anything about all this, so I need you to handle it for me." The sheer absurdity of her request gave me a headache. After all that had happened, she had the audacity to act like I was still responsible for her problems. But arguing with Haley was pointless, so I decided to stick to the facts. "You don't have to pay inheritance tax in this case," I said flatly. "The exemption limit is $2.0 million, and since I renounced my share, you're the sole heir. I've already notified a lawyer that I won't be involved, so I have no legal rights over Dad's estate anymore." There was a pause before Haley responded. Oh, that's great. You should still talk to a lawyer to get the details, I warned. Just so you know, inheriting money isn't automatic. When someone dies, their assets don't instantly go to their family. First, a legal representative handles everything, paying off debts, settling taxes, and distributing the remaining assets. If Dad's money was in a bank account under his name only, you can't access it until probate is granted. That's the law. Haley suddenly went quiet. It was obvious she had never bothered to check any of this before assuming she would walk away with millions. Anyway, I added, don't contact me again. She had nothing to say after that. The call ended. I stared at my phone, finally enjoying the silence. If Haley kept going like this, she would eventually realize her fantasy of inheriting $15 million was nothing but a misunderstanding. But explaining it to her? Fixing her problems for her? No, thanks. For the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. Later, Haley eventually consulted a lawyer, but instead of getting good news, she was hit with a harsh reality. The $15 million wasn't just cash sitting in a bank waiting for her. That was the total value of our parents' estate, including their businesses, assets, and liabilities. Most of that wealth was tied up in the companies they had built over the years, meaning it couldn't just be withdrawn like pocket money. Worse, Haley discovered something even more shocking. Because she had no involvement in our parents' businesses, she wasn't entitled to most of their assets. On top of that, she had unknowingly signed paperwork that made her responsible for certain debts. Some of those debts came from business loans she was now legally required to repay. Panicked, she clung to the lawyer, desperately asking, "How much of the inheritance can I actually get?" By the time the debts were deducted, her grand $15 million inheritance had shrunk to just about $2 million. And she wasn't happy about it. That's when the calls started again.
Ring. Ring.
I saw Haley's name flashing on my phone screen. I sighed, already knowing what was coming. She was crying. "Kate, please pick up. I'm only getting $2 million? This doesn't make any sense." Haley's voice trembled with frustration. That was still a huge amount, like winning the lottery. But to someone who had expected $15 million, it felt like a loss. "Didn't I tell you not to contact me anymore?" I said coldly. But Haley didn't care. She kept calling, crying over the phone, acting like her life was ruined. As if that wasn't enough, her troubles didn't stop there. The rumors began. Even though her actual inheritance wasn't even close to $2 million, rumors started spreading that Haley had inherited a massive $15 million fortune. Word traveled fast. Suddenly, unknown relatives, old acquaintances, and so-called friends came out of nowhere, begging for money. Some were persistent, others were aggressive. Strangers showed up at her door. Worse, she even started receiving threats, blackmailers, and extortionists demanding a share. Desperate, she flooded my voicemail with messages. "Kate, help me. Where are you? I'm suffering so much." From the way she spoke, it was clear. She had tried to find me. But I had long since moved out of my old apartment. She had nowhere to turn. Eventually, she went to the police, hoping they would put an end to the harassment. But the officers were hardly sympathetic. After all, she had started this mess herself. She had bragged about inheriting millions. She had bought expensive designer bags for her friends, flaunting her supposed wealth. The rumors had spread because of her own actions. The police could only do so much. Their final advice? Move somewhere else. But instead of taking their advice, Haley's focus suddenly shifted. A new obsession, the man of my dreams. One day, the tone of her voicemail changed completely. "Kate, I met the man of my dreams. Olivier is amazing. He doesn't even know about my inheritance. He truly loves me." I sighed. This had scam written all over it. And sure enough, I was right. She had met Olivier by chance, and within weeks, they started dating. The moment he found out she had a lot of money, he began whispering in her ear. He convinced her that banks were unsafe, that she should withdraw all her money and keep it in a home safe instead. Haley, blinded by love, ignored every warning from the bank. She closed her account, converted most of her inheritance into cash, and placed it all in a safe inside her apartment. The very next day, the safe was empty. And Olivier?
Gone.
Kate, I've been betrayed. I woke up to another flood of voicemail messages. I was deceived. Olivier was only after my money. This is the worst. My whole life is ruined. Her voice was filled with anger, heartbreak, and frustration. But I didn't feel sorry for her. This wasn't an accident, it was stupidity. What kind of person blindly trusts a man who, right after learning about their money, tells them to empty their bank account and keep everything in cash? Instead of crying to me, she should have been more careful. But the calls didn't stop. Kate, where are you? Let's live together. Strangers keep coming to my place every day. Help me. Haley's fall from luxury. After losing most of her money, Haley could no longer afford the luxury apartment she had been renting. With nowhere else to go, she moved back to our old family home. But the moment people found out she was back, new problems arose. Distant relatives and opportunistic friends started showing up, acting like they had a right to be there. You shouldn't live in such a big house alone. Why don't we stay here with you? Some were pretending to be concerned. Others were outright trying to move in. Day after day, she was surrounded by people trying to take advantage of her situation. She was mentally exhausted. And now, twice a day, she left voicemail messages begging for my help. The last call. And finally, I made up my mind. One evening, as Haley's calls kept coming in like clockwork, I picked up. Hello, I said flatly. Aren't you tired of leaving these annoying messages every single day? Are you really that bored? For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then Haley's voice, shaky and desperate, came through the line.
Kate.
You answered. Please help me. I can't take this anymore. I hate this life. I want to live with you. Her words poured out in a panic, as if she thought I would rush to her side. But I had no intention of doing that. Did you forget our deal? I asked. I gave up my share of the inheritance in exchange for never hearing from you again. How many times have you broken that promise? I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, she cried. Please, just come and get me. I don't know where else to go. Please help me. Her words tumbled over each other, a mess of apologies and pleas. But she wasn't really listening to me. She never had. No, I said firmly. Haley's sobs grew louder. Kate, please. I only picked up because this is the last time we'll ever speak. I'm changing my number, so it's pointless for you to keep calling. You're just wasting your money on phone charges. I took a deep breath and continued, my voice calm and final. Honestly, I feel great. The person who constantly lied to me, insulted me, and made my life miserable is out of my life. And not because I pushed her away, she destroyed herself. Now, I get to live happily, and you should figure out how to do the same. Haley let out a sharp, desperate scream. I heard her pleading, begging for help, maybe even asking for forgiveness. But that had nothing to do with me anymore. I had kept my promise. I never contacted her. She was the one who ruined herself. And now, I was truly free. I hung up, turned off my phone, and walked out of my apartment with light steps. My first stop? The mobile store. A new number, a fresh start. A life without Haley. Since then, life has been peaceful. I moved into a new home, started focusing on my career, and kept pushing myself forward. One day, my boss called me into his office. You know, he said, you used to get discouraged when comparing yourself to others. But that's not the case anymore. You've grown a lot. During lunch, a coworker laughed and said, you used to say things like, I'm just not good enough, but you don't anymore. You seem brighter, more confident. They were right. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living in Haley's shadow. I wasn't comparing myself to anyone. I had finally learned to appreciate myself for who I was, not who I wasn't. I may no longer have family, but I have peace. And peace is worth more than any inheritance. The luggage made the car feel too small. Mom, Dad, are you feeling hot? I asked. Yes, it's tough going home in such a tight space, Dad replied. Catherine, do you understand what we're saying? He suddenly asked. I felt nervous. What do you mean? You don't get it? You should be thankful for the chance to walk home for 5 hours. It's good exercise. You should appreciate this great opportunity. That was the last straw for me. Fine. I'll get out of the car. Walking is easy. In fact, I can already see our house. When I saw them laugh at my words, I made up my mind. I was going to get back at them for everything I had put up with. My name is Catherine Ryan. I'm 28 years old and have been married for 6 months. I met my husband, Scott, in a university hiking club. We both love outdoor activities and often take weekend trips. Scott was always the leader of the club, full of energy and making decisions for the group. When we started dating, he naturally took charge of our relationship too. I want to eat Italian food this weekend. It's been a while, I suggested once. That won't work. We're going hiking, Scott replied. Catherine, pack lunch for 2. It's difficult when you suddenly ask me to make a packed lunch, I said. Are you really arguing with me? He asked, as if it wasn't even a question. Scott always decided our plans, and his word was final. I wasn't the type to argue, so I found it easier to just go along with what he wanted. But looking back, I realized this only made him more selfish. I decided to marry Scott because, even though he could be self-centered, he seemed dependable. But when we got serious about marriage, he suddenly said something unexpected. Catherine, you'll quit your job after we get married, right? But I really love my job, I said. Why is a woman arguing? Your job is just for fun. It's not as important as mine. You should take care of the house and support my career instead. To Scott, my job didn't matter. Only his work and his lifestyle were important. And once again, his decision was final. I thought about it for a while, but as time passed, I finally decided to quit my job and become a housewife. Still, I couldn't understand why Scott wanted me to only focus on the house when balancing both work and home would have been easier. His real reason became clear after our marriage was confirmed. When we visited his parents to announce our engagement, I realized the truth. Mom, this is my future wife, Catherine. She's going to quit her job and take care of the house, Scott said. His mother responded. Oh, really? I hope she won't rely too much on your money. Scott laughed. She's not very capable, but please accept our marriage. Even though Scott was the one who told me to become a housewife, his words were harsh. He thought being a responsible husband meant making me financially dependent on him. I was just a way for him to boost his own image, especially in front of his mother. It was humiliating to be spoken about like that in front of others, including his mother. But if I said anything, Scott would get angry, so I stayed silent. Couldn't you marry a more attractive woman? His mother asked. Catherine is simple and plain-looking. She doesn't even work, so she has no special skills. It's like taking care of a child who looks like an adult. You're really kind to marry a woman like her. She seemed happy with the situation. To her, Scott was a strong and dependable man who was taking care of me. Scott often called me wasteful and liked to brag about being the head of the family. Still, I loved him, so I put up with his behavior. I believed it was my responsibility to take care of him. The harder it got, the more I tried to prove my dedication. Over time, he even stopped doing simple things like putting his clothes in the laundry basket. Since he had grown up in his parents' home without learning any chores, he didn't know how to do anything on his own, not even make a simple meal. But instead of feeling embarrassed, Scott was proud of this. He acted like earning money made him more important, and I had to follow his lead. He thought everything should go his way. Even when we were stuck in traffic, he blamed me. I can't even tell if we're driving or just sitting here. Why did you pick such a busy road? He complained. I'm sorry. I should have checked the route better, I said automatically. Without realizing it, I had developed a habit of apologizing for things that weren't even my fault. 6 months into our marriage, summer arrived, and the heat became unbearable. Catherine, let's go somewhere cool for our next break. I've already booked it, Scott suddenly announced. I was shocked. A reservation? What about my schedule? I asked. What about my plans? Scott frowned. Don't argue. A housewife like you doesn't have plans. Just like that, The trip was decided without my input. But at the end of the month, when I checked the credit card bill, it was much higher than usual. Scott, this bill looks strange.
Could there be a mistake?
Should I call the card company? I asked. No, it's correct. It's for 6 people, he replied. I was confused. 6 people? Why? Obviously, my parents and sisters are coming too. We can't just have fun by ourselves. It's nice to use money to take care of family. I wouldn't want you to seem like a selfish person who refuses to spend on them, he said casually. Since you don't usually do anything, let's make this trip meaningful. Taking care of family was important, but I was upset that he had spent so much without even asking me. Worse, he made it seem like I should be grateful. Why did you decide something this big without talking to me first? I asked. You're not good at making decisions, so I plan everything, Scott said confidently. If you have a problem with my choices, go ahead and argue your point. He refused to back down. In the end, I had no choice but to use the money my parents gave me when we got married to cover the costs. I felt like I had no control anymore. Scott kept getting worse, acting like everything I owned, my money, my time, belonged to him. He constantly put me down, and I felt like I couldn't complain or talk to anyone about it. The day of the trip finally came. My in-laws provided a big car, and 6 of us headed to the summer retreat. This was only my 3rd time meeting Scott's family. At formal gatherings, I hadn't noticed much, but during this trip, I saw how my mother-in-law did everything for my father-in-law. He wouldn't even open a water bottle by himself. He just waited for her to do it. Worse, he never even thanked her. Scott's sister looked a little annoyed by this, but her husband was completely different. He helped with chores and always checked if she was tired. I found it surprising that men like him existed. Watching my mother-in-law, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. Was this my future? She seemed happy to serve her husband, but she expected me, as her daughter-in-law, to do the same. She treated my father-in-law with care, but with me, she was strict. Catherine, how about that restaurant for dinner? She asked. I nodded. Yes, that sounds good. As if she had been waiting for this, she immediately said, Then you should make the reservation. I hesitated. You want me to make the reservation? I was surprised. Of course, you really don't notice anything, do you? It's normal for the new daughter-in-law to handle household tasks. You should have been the one to say, I'll make the reservation, my mother-in-law said. To her, a daughter-in-law was someone who had to follow her every request. Watching how much she cared for my father-in-law, I realized she expected me to do the same. Taking care of my in-laws was now added to my responsibilities, making things even harder for me. Like with Scott, there was constant, silent pressure, and I wasn't allowed to say no. The only person who supported me was my sister-in-law, Cynthia. She was older than Scott and very efficient in handling her tasks. This was the first time we really talked, but even before that, I had noticed how smart and logical she was in group discussions. Cynthia stepped in whenever my mother-in-law tried to push more work onto me. She understood how difficult it was to have an overbearing mother-in-law because she had experienced it in her own marriage. Scott, on the other hand, said nothing. He was too busy enjoying his time at the retreat. This cool breeze feels amazing. It might be nice to live in a place like this in the future, he said. My mother-in-law took a deep breath of the fresh air and nodded. Yes, it would be wonderful to retire here. But this area is expensive. It's just a dream for us. Taking full advantage of the trip, she excitedly visited tourist spots and souvenir shops. Scott, surprisingly, seemed to know his way around, even though this was supposed to be his first time here. He walked with confidence, taking us exactly where he wanted to go. His parents happily followed along without questioning his plans. Scott, have you been here before? I asked. No, this is my first time, he said. You seem to know a lot, like the best times to visit restaurants. Scott hesitated before answering. Well, the way he dodged the question made it clear he had done a lot of research beforehand. Maybe he had put effort into planning this trip for everyone. As I was lost in thought, my mother-in-law suddenly called out, Catherine, this is heavy. Help me, please. I turned to see her carrying several shopping bags, all filled with items she had bought. Did you really buy this much? I asked in surprise. Unlike you, she muttered, clearly expecting me to carry everything. I have many friends, and I need to buy souvenirs for a lot of people. Since I'm carrying so much, it's only natural for a daughter-in-law to help. I don't understand why you don't see that. Maybe it's because your parents didn't raise you properly, my mother-in-law said. Being blamed for my parents' supposed lack of good upbringing was upsetting. But my mother-in-law often said things like this. She was proud of how she had raised Scott and believed she had done a perfect job. Her attitude annoyed me, but I held back my anger and silently did as she asked. Cynthia, however, wasn't so patient. She frowned. Mom, how can you say such awful things, she said. Then she turned to me. Catherine, I'm sorry. I'll carry them with you. Just think of it as helping the elderly. The elderly? My mother-in-law snapped. Why would you say that about your own parents? I can't stay quiet when you act like this. If you don't want to hear it, then stop relying on us for everything, Cynthia shot back. I felt overwhelmed. Taking care of Scott was already stressful, but now I had to take care of my in-laws too. Still, with Cynthia's support and the excitement of being in a new place, I reminded myself why I had once fallen in love with Scott. Back when we were dating, his leadership had seemed dependable, especially in situations like this. By the time we were ready to go home, the car was completely packed, mostly with the things my mother-in-law had bought. She didn't just get souvenirs, she also stocked up on household items, saying, "Everything is so cheap here." The luggage made the car feel small and cramped. Mom, Dad, are you feeling hot? I asked. Yes, it's uncomfortable traveling back like this, Dad replied. Then, suddenly, Scott looked at me and said, Catherine, do you understand what we're trying to say? I was confused. What do you mean? You don't get it? You should walk home. It's only 5 hours.
What?
Walking home is impossible. Our house is far away, and you can't get there without using the highway, I protested. Normally, we would send the luggage by courier, but my in-laws hesitated. They didn't want to spend money on shipping. Using a courier is a waste of money, don't you think? It defeats the whole purpose of coming by car, my mother-in-law said. Besides, making you walk is free. It's good for your health. You should be thankful for such an opportunity. Most of the time, I was told not to argue back. But this time, I couldn't help myself. When I objected, Scott and his mother frowned. What do you think is more important, your body or all these souvenirs? Scott asked. You love hiking, so walking should be easy for you. It's a great chance to enjoy nature on the way back. That was it. I had reached my breaking point. I had put up with so much, but there were limits. It seemed like Scott and his mother didn't understand boundaries. They thought they could say anything to me without consequences. All right then, I'll get out of the car. Walking is easy for me. In fact, I can already see my house, I said calmly. Scott and his mother burst into laughter. What are you talking about? You're not making any sense. Have you lost your mind? His mother scoffed. I smiled and replied, Actually, there's a private resort community nearby, and one of the villas there belongs to me. I'll be there soon, so I don't need to go back to our house. I'm perfectly happy staying here. My butler will be arriving shortly to pick me up. Scott and his mother looked stunned. What I said was completely true. My father owned a business, and our family was financially comfortable. Recently, my parents had bought a vacation home in this area, planning to live here in the future. This place was popular among people moving away from the city. My parents had given me permission to use the villa as long as I took care of it during the off-season. I never told Scott about this, but just before leaving for this trip, I had shared everything with my parents. They were shocked and furious. They assured me they would support me fully, no matter what I decided. After thinking it over, I made up my mind I was going to move into the vacation home. I looked at Scott and said, I feel like I've grown stronger because of you. So, thank you. You gave me so many orders and acted so selfishly, but maybe I was never the right wife for you. Perhaps you'd be happier with someone you truly love. Scott's mother's face darkened. What do you mean by someone you love? She asked suspiciously. The truth was, I had been secretly looking into Scott's actions for a while. I had suspected he was cheating soon after our marriage. Scott started taking frequent business trips, but something felt off. The locations he mentioned didn't match his company's usual destinations. I decided to check. When I called his workplace, I found out that these trips never actually existed. In reality, Scott was visiting a woman who lived in this area, pretending it was for work. Not long ago, I even found a receipt from a store in this town in his pocket. That's when I discovered the woman's name, Shirley. She went to the same school as us, didn't she, Scott? Scott's face turned pale. He looked completely shocked. He must have thought he had everything under control. But he was wrong. His plan was too simple, and he never realized I had been paying attention all along. I had always taken care of all the household chores and knew every detail of my husband's daily life. You knew about this too? How did I not realize you were aware? Scott asked, shocked. It was Cynthia, who couldn't stay silent anymore. She found his actions unforgivable and scolded him harshly. Scott, what is this? Cheating is not acceptable, she said angrily. Even his mother, who usually took his side, looked at him with a serious expression this time. I found out that Scott was spending time with this woman in his free time. They went shopping together and had tea in this neighborhood, I said. Here are the photos as proof. I had secretly followed Scott, using my limited free time to gather evidence. If my suspicions were right, he would have left behind clues. His mother also looked at the photos on my phone. Once she saw them, any doubts, she had disappeared. Scott, explain yourself, she demanded. Under pressure from Cynthia's anger and his mother's stern look, Scott had no choice but to confess. He tried to stay calm as he spoke. All right, I'll tell the truth. Just before our marriage, I found out through social media that an old classmate of mine lives in this area. She moved here for work. Back in school, I secretly liked her. When we started talking again, we got closer and closer, he admitted. He paused for a moment. Everyone held their breath, waiting for what he would say next. But his next words were completely unexpected. But we're not in a relationship yet. We're just at a stage where we're very close to crossing that line. It's because this moment is so important that I've been coming here so often, he continued. I've already decided that I want to start a new life with her as my girlfriend in the future. His confession made my discomfort even worse. Scott wasn't just fooling around. He was seriously trying to win Shirley over. And worst of all, he had been seeing her even before our marriage. What did that make our time together? His parents were too stunned to speak for a while. Finally, his mother asked, What are you saying? What was your marriage with Catherine then? Scott let out a deep sigh. I made a mistake in my judgment. If I had met Shirley first, I would have married her instead. My relationship with Catherine just happened by chance, and that led to our marriage. I tell myself I was just unlucky. So that was it. Our marriage had never been what he truly wanted. Scott had been treating me harshly on purpose, hoping I would be the one to ask for a divorce. That explained why he had become more and more selfish after we got married. Everything he had done was just his immature way of trying to escape. He had never thought about my feelings, not even once. I couldn't accept being treated with such disrespect. At this point, I felt nothing for Scott. Even if his relationship with Shirley wasn't serious, the fact remained, he had lied and secretly met another woman. His selfishness had gone too far. I pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared in advance. They were ready to be submitted as soon as he signed.
Scott, sign this.
You won't regret getting a divorce, will you? I asked. Yeah, this might actually be a good thing. It'll clear everything up, and I'll be free to date Shirley, he said, signing the papers quickly, as if it was no big deal. Watching him, I secretly felt relieved. I carefully put the documents in my bag, then looked at him and said, Actually, Scott, I found Shirley's posts on social media and contacted her. His expression changed slightly. When I told her we were married, she was shocked. Shirley is actually a close friend of mine. At first, I was worried she might be stealing my husband, but it turns out she already has someone else. She's not interested in you at all. Scott's face froze. To prove it, Shirley even admitted that you had been visiting her, pretending it was for something else. But she never saw you as anything more than a friend. I smiled slightly before delivering the final blow. She's getting married this fall. Scott's face turned pale, so pale that even the people around us could see something was wrong. You're lying. You're just trying to trick me, he stammered.
No, Scott.
No matter what you say, the truth won't change. I held up my phone and showed him a message from Shirley. It clearly said that she only saw Scott as a good friend. Scott stared at the screen in shock, his hands trembling. Oh, and just so you know, don't even think about trying to come back to me. I don't marry just to fill an empty space in my life. From now on, you'll have to stand on your own, I told him firmly. Scott had seen Shirley as his emotional support, but now that was gone. He looked completely lost. With our connection severed, he had nothing left. Honestly, it was probably for the best. Shirley would never want to take care of a man who couldn't even do basic household chores. She would surely build a life with someone far better than him. I might have been too soft on you, but in the end, you failed as a husband, I said. Scott muttered to himself, his voice weak. How did it end up like this? Was the last 6 months completely meaningless? I gave him a knowing look.
Yes.
You were just fooling yourself over a kind classmate. Or maybe you willingly played along with the lie. I paid the price for the miserable 6 months you put me through, I said firmly. It's foolish to throw away your family over something so meaningless. Scott grabbed my arm, silently begging me not to leave. Cynthia immediately stepped in. Stop depending on others. Throughout this whole trip, I've been so annoyed by you and your mother. You both acted like Catherine was supposed to do everything for you. Who do you think you are? No one acts like that anymore. All the freedom you've enjoyed until now is finally catching up with you. The car was in complete chaos. Scott's usually quiet father and brother-in-law just sat there, watching everything unfold without saying a word. From the way you've behaved on this trip, I can only imagine how awful everyday life must be with you, Cynthia continued. I couldn't stand it even for a single day. The old ways of thinking, that men or mothers-in-law are more important, don't work anymore. I wish you'd stop treating this like a joke. Suddenly, Scott let out a laugh. Catherine, no matter how tough you act, it's pointless. Even if you hate it, you can't survive on your own.
You don't have a job.
You have no choice but to depend on me. I made sure of that, he said smugly. His attitude made it clear. He still thought he had control over me. Even if we divorce, your options will be limited. So just accept reality, destroy the divorce papers, and go back to your role of taking care of the house, he ordered. Finally, his true feelings came out. To him, I was nothing more than a housemaid. Looking back, even when we were dating, maybe his kindness was only on the surface. In reality, he had just been looking for someone who would take care of everything for him. I was so shocked by his words that I laughed. What are you even talking about? I make more money than you, I said. Scott rolled his eyes and laughed even louder. Stop joking. What can a housewife who stays home all day possibly do? Don't insult real working people. How will you, someone who knows nothing about the real world, make money? I raised an eyebrow. Who's really out of touch here? You can't even take care of yourself. And you have the nerve to lecture me? You've been skipping work to meet women, and yet you think you have everything under control? I pulled out my phone and held it up for him to see. Look at this, I said. On the screen was my net banking app. A recent deposit of $1,000 had just come in during our 2-day trip, along with notifications of several other deposits from the past few days. After Scott made me quit my job, I had started selling my handmade crafts as a hobby. Scott's face went pale. He looked completely stunned, as if he had never considered this possibility. That wasn't surprising. I had never told him about it. In fact, early in our marriage, when he saw some of my craft supplies, he had scolded me, asking why I was wasting time on something so silly. He had no idea what I was truly capable of. I started selling my crafts as a small side job to help with household expenses. But after seeing how Scott reacted, I decided to keep it a secret. Actually, my recent pieces have been selling really well and at high prices. I sell them every day, and I'm seriously thinking about starting my own business. To be honest, divorcing you is a win for me. I can focus on growing my business and won't have to waste time taking care of you. I said. Scott looked completely shocked. He mumbled, starting a business, and stood frozen. I knew that running a business would take a lot of effort, but now that I was confident in earning my own money, I was ready for the challenge. Unlike you, who just wastes time at work, I'm going to build my own future, I added. Cynthia nodded in agreement. Scott slumped his shoulders in defeat. I feel like the time I spent being controlled by you was a complete waste, I continued. From now on, live your life however you want. You're not good at facing reality, so I won't bother with you anymore. Just don't ever interfere in my life again. Cynthia agreed. That's a great idea. He's always relied on others while doing nothing himself. This time, let's make sure he actually learns how to take care of himself. I couldn't help but laugh. You're right. He may look like an adult, but inside, he's still a child. I'm tired of babysitting him. Maybe it's time he learns to live on his own. Then I turned to Scott and his mother. As I said earlier, I'll walk home. It's just 10 minutes away. With that, I stepped out of the car and shut the door behind me. Before walking away, I leaned down to the car window and added, "Oh, and by the way, your mother said she couldn't imagine living here. But I'm sorry to say that I'll be the one enjoying this beautiful place. If you want to live here too, good luck figuring it out." I smiled and waved as I walked away. Scott and his mother scowled, clearly frustrated. And that was it. I finalized the divorce, secured a small amount of savings from our marriage, and even received some compensation for everything I had endured. I used that money to officially start my own business. Cynthia and I stayed good friends even after the divorce. Later, she told me what happened in the car after I left. It was a total disaster, she said, laughing. Scott completely lost his confidence, and his mother was in shock when she heard about your business and your vacation home. Those two are hopeless. Even if Scott tries dating again, with his personality, marriage won't be easy for him. I couldn't help but smile. I was finally free, and my new life was just beginning. I could easily picture that situation. Even if Scott changed his selfish ways, his controlling mother would still be there, making life difficult. Any woman with common sense would run away. According to Cynthia, Scott had completely lost his confidence and was now too afraid to even talk to women. He was living alone, but it wasn't easy for him. He struggled with simple daily tasks. His father refused to help him, saying his selfish behavior had finally caught up with him. Cynthia found the whole thing amusing and said Scott would have a tough life from now on. She had also distanced herself from her mother, which had made her life much less stressful. Today, Cynthia visited my home. She looked around and smiled. "This is such a beautiful and stylish house, Catherine. It's wonderful. Thanks to you, I'm doing well, Cynthia." "Thank you for coming all this way," I replied. Cynthia smiled warmly and waved her hand. "It's no problem. Coming here is a nice break for me, and the weather is great. I was really looking forward to spending time with you. It feels like I've gained a new sister." Her kind words touched my heart. After everything I had been through, it was comforting to have someone like her in my life. It felt like we had formed a special bond. Free from toxic family ties, we were building a supportive friendship. "Hey, Cynthia, this is for you," I said, handing her a piece of jewelry I had designed just for her. Cynthia's eyes lit up as she took it. "Wow, this is beautiful. Did you make this yourself, Catherine? You're really talented." "I want to wear it right now," she said excitedly, putting it on immediately. Seeing her so happy made me feel just as joyful. Even though my marriage to Scott had been a mistake, meeting Cynthia had been a blessing. Not everything from that time had been meaningless. Now, in this peaceful neighborhood, I was ready to truly enjoy my life, on my own terms.